I have three quick pieces of business, then an update as it relates to the budget.
Can they help me out?
Excuse me, folks. Thank you.
Sorry, I dropped you.
All right. From the docket of April 2nd, 2019, I entertain a motion to approve the request of the mayor to transfer $6,000 from 12401-000-511000 protective inspection salary to account 12401-000-530101 protective inspection professional services for funds to pay an alternative electrical inspector due to the retirement of the electrical inspector.
Second.
Thank you, Councilor Kobus. I think this one is honestly as straightforward as they come. Any questions or concerns? Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Motion passes. Opposed? Motion passes. From the docket of April 2nd, 2019, I entertain a motion to approve the request of the mayor to transfer $200 from account 11331-000-524211 budget administration, maintenance of software to account 11331-000-514030 budget administration longevity for funds to cover longevity payment.
Second.
Thank you. As is common this time of year, we will see department heads transfer money where there's excess in accounts to cover such things as longevity, and things alike in order to get through the end of the fiscal year. Any questions or concerns on that one? Mr. Conti?
So we all know the calendar. We know the 53rd year has been there. The 53rd week has been there since the beginning of the year.
Correct.
Why is this a budgeted item?
It was inadvertently underfunded in the budget as the backup material. From Barry Lacasse, I respectfully request you submit a request to the council for an appropriation of $200 to cover longevity payment that was inadvertently underfunded. So
the key word is inadvertently?
correct.
Okay.
And it came from Barry. So the reality is, if anyone knows the budget, it is Barry. We've known that.
This isn't the first time this has happened, Counselor.
I'm not saying it is, Counselor. What I am saying is that these things will happen, and it's $200 from within his own line items.
So you
that he was able
understand
to
my
transfer.
skepticism.
I understand the skepticism, and I've called it out on many times when it's not planned for, where this was an inadvertent, how did you put it? Inadvertently underfunded. You know, if it was an everyday, and as a matter of fact, this is really one of the few that we've received this year. So,
I think there's 4 of them in total.
it's the first one that's come in front of my committee.
Well, maybe they're spread around, but I read through everything today, and I think there's 4.
Well, if there's something coming down, I can't speak to that yet, but
Right.
I can speak to where we're at this point.
Right. Just,
What did you say, $200?
$200, yeah.
Boy, that's tough, huh? With all that amount of money, you come
Well, that's the way
$200
I
off
look
and
at
you're crucifying the guy, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's $200. I think
but you haven't heard the end of it. There's 4 more coming down the pike.
then those ones might make more sense to have a more robust conversation. So, you know, errors happen. So if we start to see a pattern, then I think that your comments would be more appropriate.
Well, Counsel, that's exactly my point, is that this, I think, is the 3rd year in a row that the 53rd week has come in as an not as emergency, but as a inadvertent omission.
Correct. I don't know that this is necessarily tied to the 53rd week. I do share your concern, and I've voiced that concern here on the floor several times since I've been a councilor, especially since I've been the chairman of the Budget and Appropriations Committee. Now, depending upon what comes down and where it goes and what that story is, my comments, I reserve the right to change my comments. At this point, it's $200, of which Barry has, not asking for money out of the reserve fund for transfer or free cash. So at this one, I think we give the department head the benefit of the doubt.
Okay.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Motion passes. From the docket of April 2nd, 2019, I entertain a motion to approve the request of the mayor to, let me start over from the docket of April 2nd, 2019. I entertain a motion to approve the request of the mayor regarding the EPA's MPDES2 general permit, also known as MS4, in the need for a consultant to work on the update for the local stormwater management ordinance as well as regulations for the planning Planning Board and Conservation Commission to be in compliance with the current NPDES2. Therefore, the mayor hereby requests your honorable body to appropriate $33,240 from account 1000-359000 undesignated fund balance free cash general government to account 11241000-530101 citywide professional services.
Second.
Thank you, Council Cobus. Mr. Conti, I know that this is something that's been in the Capital Improvements Committee for quite some time, and now it's coming to fruition. So I had the opportunity to speak with our city planner, and I just want to read a couple different things from Gary's communication, but then just a few takeaways of my conversation with him. So the EPA's NPDES, also known as NPDES 2, general permit, also known as MS4, has been a topic contained in our annual capital improvement programs for the past several years. As you know, NPDES 2 was finally implemented in April 2016. It's important to note that the first NPDES was in 2000, 2001. The plan was 5 years after, probably 2006, 2007, for the federal government to roll out the NPDES 2. This didn't happen until 2016. As you famously say, government moves slow. This is a good example of that. So, Gary, the Department of Planning and Development, in collaboration with Department of Public Works and the Office of Budget Administration, began to address the initial steps of implementation. Currently, with engineering consultant services, the city completed and filed the notice of intent application with the EPA on September 30th of last year. In addition, the staff is working with the engineering consultant to update the city's local stormwater management ordinance, as well as the stormwater regulations for the Planning Board and Conservation Commission in order to be in compliance with these 2 general permit. So what I would suggest, and I can get this out to everyone, if you haven't had the opportunity to read the backup, it's pretty in-depth, and I think Gary did a really nice job of not getting too far into the weeds, but being able to give us the opportunity to really understand and see what this is going about. This is, again, without getting far into it, it is an unfunded mandate. This is something the federal government says we have to do. This is something that we need to do to ensure we get into compliance and, stay in compliance. So in order to carry out this work, we need to request the funds for $33,240 for professional engineering services. Additional work aside from this phase will need to be undertaken in fiscal 20 and 20. So this is for the work that needs to get done in this phase. I am expecting to see, and I'm hopeful that we'll budget for it, but I think that we'll see it most likely in this year's capital improvements book, which came down. So anything you want to add to that, Council? I know that you're all...
I'll say that this is us protecting our planet, and we'll leave it at that.
Yep, fair enough. Anything you want to add? Okay. Anything I missed? Attaboy. All right. Any other questions or concerns? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? None? Motion passes. Before I adjourn, I just want to, and I'll ask Virginia to share the schedule with everything. So I've been speaking with the city auditor and the director of budget and administration trying to get a schedule for the budget. We all know what's going on with the budget. It's going to be tight as it is every year. As Frank Cook said when he was here, I think, we all know what's coming down in the budget. It's 95% contractual. So what I want to do is get a majority of the department heads to come down. I'm speaking with some that will come down that I will speak with Deb Gould potentially. Someone like the clerk, for instance, and there's no change in the budget. There's literally no change. No need for them to come down. I thought it was important last year to have everyone come down as we had several new councilors. I want to stay very strict with the guidelines and the timelines as we did last year. So the hearings will be Monday, May 6th, starting at 5:30. I know it's difficult for some to get here at 5:30, but we will have the AACS will be recording it. We'll be able to go back. If there's specific questions, please let me know. I'll ensure that I ask them. You can always reach out to Deb if you have specific questions too. Wednesday, May 8th, 5:30 to 7:45. Thursday, May 9th, 5:30 to 6:45. This leaves us an entire week in May, the second week in May, open in the event that anything should come up. If there's something that, we're not comfortable with, that we want to further investigate, we can call for meetings and we can take care of that. May 14th, I'd like to call a meeting at 6 o'clock so we can read the budget into the record. Do that on an off night, so we're cognizant of everybody's time, as that can be quite the amount of reading. On Monday, May 20th, I would call for a committee meeting, and we can do that later on in the evening if it's 6:30 or 7 is better for you guys, so we can craft the budget message and have that ready to go. What I would like to do is be able to vote the budget on May 21st. I know this is a little bit aggressive, but I think that there's not a ton of change that's going in. I think this is going to be a little more straightforward than we've seen in years past, and I think that it gives the administration the time that they need to tie up everything going forward.
Now, have we?
Councilor Copus.
Thank you.
I'm just
Excuse
kidding. I'm just fooling.
Have we technically received the budget? Is the
No, so
the timer ticking?
we're still waiting on a cherry sheet to come down from the state, is my understanding.
Okay.
As of now, we're looking at April 23rd. So I have no reason to believe that
Plenty of time.
it would be later than that. Yep. Vice President Perica?
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. A couple of comments, if you don't mind. One, when you're in your conversations with Mr. Lacasse,
Yes.
if it's possible for him to send the budget to us in like a digital format,
Sure.
That would be really terrific. Excel would be preferable over a PDF. So if we could make that request and have that sent to the municipal council, I'd appreciate it. Additionally, I have sat through many a budget meeting, and I very much, though you call it aggressive, I believe it's actually very organized and very straightforward with your plan. I appreciate that very much, because it can, when we've run into problems with previous budget chairs where we had a meeting scheduled and then the meeting get canceled and then communication breaks down, and I think having this plan out early, even before we get the budget, we can make arrangements to our schedule to make sure that we're there. I think it's important too, if you can't be here by 5:30, it's not a life or death situation, and you can rewatch it. So it seems, so the budget is a giant elephant, and how do you take down an elephant? It's one bite at a time.
Yes.
And I think that the way you're managing it is excellent, and I think we'll be able to manage it well. So thank you for that.
Thank you. I appreciate the words. And you're right. We need to kind of chunk it down the best we can. I want to give everyone enough time to plan, because it's an awful lot of time away from our families. So families, because we're not all one family, but
And we get to spend more time with this particular family.
that we do, right? The other thing that Deb Gould and I have spoken about is potentially using the electronic, the visual board, so we can actually have the budget up there, so people at home can see it, so we can have it. So, any other suggestions you guys have, please feel free to let me know. But I'm feeling pretty good about where we're at, and I think that we'll be in good shape going forward. Any questions or concerns that we have? All right, thank you all. Seeing none, I would like to call for an adjournment at 6:58.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor? Aye. We are adjourned at 6:58.
The Municipal Council to order at 7:08. Please stand and join me in a salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. There is one set of minutes. At this time, I'd entertain a motion to approve the minutes of February 19th, 2019.
Second.
Thank you. Motion is in order. Any questions or comments? Hearing none. No roll call. I always get this. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes. Mr. Withers, would you kindly read the...
Do we want to get the planning board first?
Yes, let's do that one first. Yes. Perfect. We'll do the planning board first.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Gary.
It's easy.
Hello.
How are you?
Hello.
Good.
Hi.
How are you?
Hi.
How you doing, friends?
Thanks for joining.
Is me on? Good evening.
Hello. How are you, Melinda? Good to see you.
A little loud, isn't it, that shirt tonight?
Do you need batteries for that?
Huh? You stand out enough, never mind.
Just grab one from the audience.
What do you got?
Well, I wouldn't if I was you.
You gotta go blind, that's why, Jason.
All right.
All right.
Mr. Withers, would you kindly read the notice of the first joint public hearing?
Yes, first public hearing tonight is relative to amending Section 17 zoning ordinances of the revised ordinances of the City of Attleboro to change the special permit granting authority for marijuana establishments from Special Permit Municipal Council, SMC, to Special Permit Zoning Board of Appeals, S.
Thank you. Is there anyone here to speak in favor?
Good evening, President Cooper, members of the council, Chairman Denisi, members of the planning board. Jack Jacoby, 15 Prince Street. I am not here in a capacity representing any client. I'm just here as a public-spirited citizen. Right now, we have a split of authority in the sense that you are the special permit granting authority for marijuana establishments, but the zoning board retained jurisdiction over all of the other subsidiary things, such as parking space size and earth removal and everything else that might go into an application. And my opinion is that that split is not a good one. I think that asking the zoning board to act on certain things without the actual use, or asking you to act on the use without the other things that go with it that are required, is not good policy. And so I recommend that you put it all in one place. And it seems to me that it should be with the zoning board. That's what they do. I know how much time you have spent on these applications. I've been in front of you for hours on one of them. And my opinion is that you should do what you do best, which is spend the taxpayers' money wisely and make policy and legislate for the city, and that the zoning board is well set up to grant these permits. So I think that this is a good thing, and I hope that you would pass it so that we have all of the authority over the applications in one place and your time is freed up. I know how much time you guys spend on everything else, and I'd rather see you doing the things that are really, really important for the city.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Scott?
I know in the past, one of the arguments in favor of keeping this with the council as the special permit granting authority was that there was an expectation that we would add more visibility to some of these special permits. Do you feel that that's still required? Is there any value in holding on to, us adding some visibility to these licenses that we should hold on to, or do you think it's best to hand it over to the zoning board?
Well, I think it is best to hand it over to the zoning board. I would suggest to you that the same people are going to get the notice, no matter who is the special permit granting authority. The only difference is the zoning board meetings aren't televised, but that's something that we have no control over. But I would suggest to you that that the zoning board is well set up to handle this. They are well set up to listen to abutters and give them their due in making decisions. And so I think the only difference is that they're not televised, and I'm not sure why.
Okay. Any questions from the planning board? Any, Council Conti, were you thinking about a question? You looked like you were going to go like that.
Don't I look good controlling myself?
Thank you, Jack.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else here to speak in favor? Anyone else to speak in favor? Anyone to speak in opposition? Anyone to speak in opposition? Anyone neither for nor against? Gary.
Good evening, Council President, members of the Municipal Council, Planning Board Chairman, and members of the Planning Board. For the record, my name is Gary Arajian. I'm the city's Director of Planning and Development, and I'm actually here tonight just to, neutral on the matter. It's not a matter of land use policy. It's not really a matter of substance, so I really don't have an opinion because it's a matter of process, whether the municipal council continues to administer the zoning ordinance for this matter or the zoning board. It's one half dozen or the other. What I wanted to express tonight to the council and the planning board is we briefly spoke about this at the zoning board meeting, and I just want to reassure the city council and the planning board, should you ultimately make the zoning board the SPGA, we'll do the job. And also for the reasons that Attorney Jacoby spoke about, he kind of stole my thunder. There are some applications that the special permit for the marijuana use is before the city council, but for a variety of reasons, other forms of relief are needed. Earth removal, parking, work within a floodplain, buffer zones, variances. It would be helpful if that was all bundled together, because the zoning board could ask questions about land use. Now, of course, that's not absolutely critical because there are instances where the land use is already by right and you need that relief anyway. So it's not like the special permit is the panacea for everything and you have to go to the zoning board. There are several instances where the land use is permitted by right, you need this other ancillary relief, and the board really doesn't have the authority to ask too many questions about the land use. So on that one point, I kind of differ from Attorney Jacoby, that because the land use is before the city council, it's a little difficult for the zoning board. Lots of times the land use is by right and the zoning board doesn't have jurisdiction. But in this case, since it is the land use with one body and the other ancillary relief with another board, there are lots of questions we're chomping on the bit to ask, but out of fairness to the applicant, you really can't. Our focus is narrowed. But if we bundle it up together, we're perfectly capable of processing it just like we do everything else. So I just want to, again, at 50,000 feet, just convey to you that the board, the zoning board, will do a great job if you do ultimately, your ultimate wisdom, make the board the SPGA.
Great. Thank you. Any, Vice President?
Thank you for coming in, or being here as always, Gary. So we've gone through a couple of these applications, and would it be your opinion that it would help additionally streamline the process internally here between our office and your office and the building office and everybody else's offices?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from the planning board? Any from the council? Council Gilbis?
I just want to say thank you for all the reports that your office puts together and all of your help in pushing forward these special permits. And there's a lot of work, and obviously it's a joint effort between you and Virginia, but I forget how long that last report was.
Well, there were 5 applications out of fairness, so it wasn't one report that was 50 pages. There were 5 different applications on that, so.
At least 50, 60 pages. So I know there's a lot of work that happens behind the scenes there, and I just want to say thank you for that.
Thank you, sure.
It's incredibly helpful.
Well, that's just a little porthole that you get into our office, but I know the planning board can attest. We do that with the zoning board, the planning board, and the conservation commission. It's not due to that for the city council, but there's just one little aspect that you realize, what my staff goes through, so they're very good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Council Holmes, do you see any reason to keep this public hearing open?
I do not.
Mr. Chairman, do you see any reason to keep this public hearing open? I'll declare that public hearing closed, and we will, the planning board is continuing their meeting in the...
No, we were able to
You're done.
get
Well, aren't you
through our
lucky?
agenda this evening.
Have a great night. Thank you.
Can I go with you?
Started at 5:30.
Do you want to take my spot for the night?
Good night.
Goodbye, Bert.
Hey, take it easy. Say
All
hello
right.
to the wife.
Moving on to the next.
All right, next public hearing is relative to the administration's proposed 2019 through 2023 CDBG 5-year consolidated plan and program year, 2019 Community Development Block Grant Entitlement Budget for the CDBG entitlement year, July 1st, 2019 through June 30th, 2020. The proposed program year 2019 annual action plan is requested the mayor on behalf of the city of Attleboro be authorized to submit to the Department of Housing and Urban Development the proposed CDBG 5-year consolidated plan, CDBG budget, and proposed activities to be undertaken during the upcoming CDBG entitlement year.
Perfect, thank you. Is there anyone here to speak in favor?
Good evening, Dorothy Brissett, Community Development Director for the City of Attleboro. I reside in Douglas, Massachusetts. I'm here to present the 2019 through 2023, oddly enough, 5-year consolidated plan, and also the program year 2019 annual action plan for the Community Development Block Grant Program. I have passed out the budget, the social service agencies who have applied for funding, and also a slideshow presentation, which I'd like to attempt, and hopefully I will not fail to present this evening. Technology and I are not friends, so I apologize in advance for any mishaps.
Is technology friends with anybody?
Definitely not.
He says to the guy who works for Google.
Yeah. Yes, Bill Lennox. I've asked him to stay a little later tonight, and I've promised him many cups of coffee tomorrow morning as a result of that. So, the City of Attleboro has been an entitled community since the early 90s. We've received a substantial amount of federal block grant funds over the years. We've served a copious amount of Attleboro low-income residents throughout our years. I am a proud employee of this city. I have to say, I've been here for about 5.5 years now. I began my tenure with the block grant program about 18 years ago, and I started off just as a regular clerk, moved into an administrative position, which I did the soup to nuts application process, and then I came to the city and still continue to do the soup to nuts. And I have just never been so proud as to be an employee of this city. We do a lot of wonderful things with the block grant program here, and I just want to applaud everybody for all of their efforts, from the administration through the council's votes, through the social service agencies, our overall staff, our departments that work really well together and making sure that everyone is properly served and everyone's needs are met. So I just want to put that out there. I'm really glad that I came here, and I'm glad to be a part of this great community. So just as a forethought. Every 5 years, entitled communities are required to review various amounts of data to determine what the needs of our communities are. This year, I have reviewed our 2010 census data, the comprehensive housing affordability strategic data sets, which is also the data sets that HUD uses to analyze the community and determine whether or not the community can continue to be an entitled community of block grant funds. We've used the analysis for impediment of further fair housing plan. That's a new plan that was recently written this year. Part of our 14 community consortium that the city is a part of was required to analyze what the impediments of each community was, and this is a report that was written and that we have extracted some data from to use to determine what the needs of our community are for our future 5-year plan. We held a public hearing meeting on January 30th, and we also met with various social service agencies, some departments. We did a quick survey and just compiled some data to determine what the needs were for our community. In analyzing that data, there was few difference from where we were 5 years ago to where we are now. We still determined that there was a need for affordable housing. There was a need for the rehabilitation of housing, especially for housing for persons of elderly and also family housing. There's a lot of dilapidated rental housing that we have in our existing housing stock that needs some attention. So the continued support of housing rehabilitation for rental housing was a big area where we saw some concern and where we received some feedback from. The continued improvements in accessibility to public facilities, whether it be improvements to some sidewalks for handicapped accessibility, providing some sidewalks to some low-income neighborhoods, doing some public facility improvements to buildings that are not currently accessible. The continued support of economic development opportunities and creation of jobs, and also the continued support of social service agencies that help some of our severely lowest income populations in the city. So over the next 5 years, we're proposing that we'll do about 10 new single-family housing rehabilitation projects. This number is slightly conservative than what we planned in the past, simply because our housing rehab projects in the past 5 years yielded a slightly higher housing rehabilitation cost than what we had anticipated. So we opted to do a little bit more slightly conservative number in our approach over the next 5 years. In this upcoming year, we're proposing to do 3 new projects. If we determine as the 5 years go on that we get a little bit better bang for our buck and our money goes a little bit further, then we'll do more emergency assistant projects. We were noticing that when we were starting a housing rehabilitation project that we were seeing a lot of unforeseeable costs. For example, we entered into a contract to do some lead remediation to update a heating system. It was a $90,000 initial cost, and ultimately the final cost was about $130,000. When we opened up the roof was severely dilapidated. There was some unforeseeable costs there. Part of the lead abatement was to do some siding work. We pulled off the siding. The wood underneath was completely rotted through. These are all unforeseeable costs. There was a termite issue. These are all expenses that added on to the project. We saw a couple of activities throughout the 5 years that were similar to that, so our total cost was a little higher than we had anticipated. Therefore, we're thinking we'll do less projects at more money. If it turns out that our project costs are less, then we'll do more projects. I'd rather be conservative with our approach and reach higher goals at the end of our 5 years than come in with a lot of numbers and then have to explain to HUD why we didn't meet our ultimate goals. Another area that we would like to address over the next 5 years is an affordable housing initiative, either through the rehabilitation of affordable housing or the acquisition of affordable housing. This is either the rehabilitation or the acquisition of rental housing. As I mentioned before, there are some rental housing units out there that are severely dilapidated that could use some attention. We have a shortage of family housing. we have a shortage of good family housing here in Attleboro that is available to moderate and low-income families. Most of our moderate and low-income families in the city are renters, and a lot of housing that we're seeing isn't meeting minimum housing quality standards. So I'd like to push an initiative over the next 5 years to really focus some of our CDBG money in meeting those initiatives. As part of that, we would enter into an affordable housing restriction with these landlords, which essentially means the landlord is tied to a limited rent over the next 10 or 15 years, whatever the terms and conditions we choose. That would depend on the amount of money they would receive as well, too. We would tie a affordable housing restriction over a period of time. If a landlord is interested in purchasing a triple-decker or six-family, there would be funding available for that acquisition. In return, they would have to offer up a lower income rent to lower income families for a period of time. So that would be the city's method of offering up more affordable housing units to affordable families. You have a question?
Thank you. So, it's just, I think that's a fantastic potential program. You know, that's one of the things that we have conversation about regularly, especially with June Fleischman, about the availability of low-income housing. So I guess, and these aren't questions you have to answer for me right now. You can get back to me later.
Sure.
So there are some families who are significantly, their level of income is so low that they qualify for subsidies from the state.
Yeah.
For that rent. Are we talking about individuals such as that?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. We actually almost encourage landlords to work with subsidized type programs that allows the landlord to maximize the amount of rent that's available to them, but yet still offer the tenant the availability to a decent affordable unit without maximizing more than 30% of their annual income. If you have a tenant who's only making $24,000 a year, the amount of income or the amount of rent that they can afford is only $500 a month. We all know that no one can find a one-bedroom apartment for $500 a month. That's 30% of their annual income. That's what we would base our program guidelines on. That's the maximum amount that they would be able. If the landlord were to pair up with a state subsidized type program, then there are fair market rents that are the maximum amount of rents. So for example, in Attleboro, that's $990 for a one-bedroom apartment. That individual who can only pay $550 a month can now live in a one-bedroom apartment, only pay $550 a month, but if they're paired with a subsidized program, that landlord can collect the $900 a month. So the state subsidy pays the $400, and the tenant pays the $500. So we actually almost encourage landlords to work with, it's not a program requirement, but in order to get our assistance, these are our guidelines. And oh, by the way, if you pair up with the housing authority or a state agency, you have a better probability of, at a minimum, receiving the maximum amount of rent allotted to you through the program guidelines.
So it is that would encourage a landlord to take, you'll have an apartment that's been refurbished that you could get a higher fair market rental value for.
Correct.
Then they agree to work with the city and with the state to allow that subsidized
That's
housing.
correct.
Would that be?
Yeah, that's
Thank
fair
you.
to say.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you very much.
Yeah? Yes, sir.
Yes, 2 years ago, maybe 3, I was working on a YMCA project with the homeless in Attleboro. We were focusing on one particular motel off of Newport Ave.
Okay.
And then the state government went through a process with the governor's push to really pretty much empty out the people from motels.
Okay.
And they were given a certain amount of money, and that would be it for 1 year to find a job and to meet, and they were with families, and get a car if they needed one, whatever they needed. So I'm guessing, nobody really knows, that at least half these people who were living in South Attleboro, and they were already in the school system, the children, stayed here in Attleboro. And so we inherited a population, and this is going to help some of these people.
It's possible that it could, yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
and they kind of disappeared into our community.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's a lot of people that fall through the cracks, especially those who fall right in that income situation where they may make too much income to qualify for one program, but not enough income to pay for rent on their own. So this will substantially help a lot of those families.
I hope so.
So we're, yeah, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Yes.
So the landlord would apply for this to have their.
Yeah, the
their
landlord
unit.
would apply through our program, correct, yep, and then they would be subject to our guidelines. And then over the term of the affordable period, we would monitor the units. So we would request income information from the tenants to ensure that the tenants are still low to moderate income during the term of the affordability. And then there would be loan repayments, depending again on the amount of money needed, there are two terms that they could comply with, either rent to severely low income for a higher grant, to moderate income for a higher loan amount, depending on, which term they would choose, essentially.
So it's a loan?
It would be loan and grant.
Okay.
Correct, depending again on the terms. The policy, the guidelines, I haven't officially written the full guidelines at this point, but they'll be finalized before the comment period, which starts on April 11th, and they'd be subject to the comment period and submit it to HUD for the final plan.
And so they do have to agree that it's affordable?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
As a commitment?
Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely,
All right,
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and when the landlord does agree to work with a state agency, it actually makes the income recertification process a little easier for them and us, because there's a simple form that the tenant just signs and it goes to that state agency, and the agency already needs to verify the tenant's income to certify that they can continue to be a part of that program and continue to assist that or receive those funds. So it actually helps everybody out in the long run. It's difficult. Some landlords sort of steer away for these types of programs because they don't want to have to chase their tenants down for income data, and they feel, awkward asking them for this information. But, if they pair up with the state agency, then the agency does all the work for them.
And then the single-family units are owners?
Owner, yes,
Okay.
owner occupied, correct. And single family is actually identified 1 to 4 units, but we would limit that to 1 to 2 units. So if it's owner occupied on one side, then the project would qualify on the owner's side.
Great, thank you.
Great.
So we would propose doing about 40 units over the next 5 years. Public facility improvements, again, that would be accessibility, providing accessible sidewalks, handicapped accessible sidewalks, or accessible handicapped accessibility in any public facilities, or putting in any new sidewalks, not existing sidewalks, or offering any maintenance to existing sidewalks in low-income neighborhoods. So new sidewalks in low-income neighborhoods. The opportunity for new jobs through economic development initiatives. We would propose to do 10 new jobs over the next 5 years. And then the continued support of social service agencies. We're proposing that we'll serve about 3,000 people over the next 5 years. So the Department of Housing and Urban Development has not released the final entitlement. Surprise, surprise. We're faced with this the same time every year. But because we are subject to our formal annual process, I'm before council again with a fictitious sort of budget. We are hearing that our final allocation is due sometime within the next couple of weeks. But for now, for planning purposes, we anticipate receiving level funding. In the existing program year, we received $434,221 in entitlement funds. We anticipate receiving about $18,000 in program income. We have about $50,000 in unobligated funds in the current year. These are funds that we had budgeted for other projects that didn't fully expend the funds, so they're just unobligated and we're rolling them into the new year. And then we have $76,000 in neighborhood stabilization funds that were transferred into the CDBG program. program. Back in 2009, the city had received $1.199 million, just shy of $2 million in neighborhood stabilization funds to do some renovation work to the city on some dilapidated properties. We have fully exhausted those initial entitlement funds, but as a result of that, we've been generating program income. We did some loans and grant assistance through that program. Because the state wants to close out the neighborhood stabilization grant, they gave entitled communities the option to transfer any program income that they collect annually over to their entitlement CDBG block grant program. So every year, as we're collecting the program income, at the end of each year, you'll now see a new line that includes the neighborhood stabilization grants as funds transferred into the block grant to be used as CDBG eligible activity funds. Those funds cannot be used to increase the amount of money that is available for social service agencies and to increase the amount of money that's available for our administrative budget. Our admin budget and our social service agency budget is capped at a percentage of our the amount of program income that we collect, as well as our entitlement funds. And those NSP funds cannot be used to add to those budgets to increase the amount of available funds to that budget. Okay. So the amount available going into program year 2019, federal fiscal year 20, is $578,221. A notice was placed in the Sun Chronicle on January 14th requesting proposals with a submission deadline date of February 22nd. We received applications from various social service agencies, one for a new public facility improvement and also for the acquisition of affordable housing. So the mayor, myself, and Gary met. I reviewed the applications for their whether or not they qualify for CDBG funds. In review of the applications, excuse me, we determined that funding should be made available in the following areas. $86,400 available to cover 100% of the Community Development Block Grant Director's salary. My position is 100% funded out of the grant. No city funds are used to support my position. We also cover our own postage. We cover our own copier. Anybody that is ever near my copier, I'm like, well, wait a minute, what do you want to use it for? I only get X number of copies per month. So we cover all expenses related to the block grant. Our legal attorney fees are also included in that budget. Anything related to the administration of the block grant program is all covered under our administrative budget and the housing rehabilitation support budget. Okay. Public facility improvement, we received one application from Arkadelph Day Center. They're proposing to put a new ramp on their building to increase the amount of day services available to their handicapped patrons. By doing so, they'll increase the number of persons served through their program, and they'll have 46 new clients that they can serve. Okay. Yeah. Hi.
Yeah, hold on one second.
I'm sorry.
Okay, go ahead.
So I just wanted to make sure that, so the ramp itself is costing $50?
Correct, yeah.
Is that changed?
That's actually very cost reasonable. It's a ramp inside the building itself. It's not an exterior. So based on the application itself and the plans that were attached, I had our rehab consultant specialist review it, and he thought it was very reasonable.
Okay, how can you tell me how long it is, or does it service one floor?
It services one floor, yeah. I wouldn't be able to tell you how long it is, but I do have the application that I can scan and send to you. Sure.
I would like that. You can actually give it to
Virginia.
She'll put it in my file.
No problem.
I don't know if others would like
Anybody
it.
else?
It would be great. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay.
Steve, I have a question.
Yes, sure.
Because you only got one application, I'm concerned that maybe there's other needs that people aren't aware of this. Can you tell me a little bit about that process? Because so they just are the only ones that applied, so they're getting it, basically? Is that?
Well, I mean, they're the only ones that applied. We typically send notice to the Department of Public Works. In the past, we've done a majority of our public facility improvement projects with the Department of Public Works. In previous years, we've actually put a substantial amount of block grant funds in new sidewalk renovation. As far as social service agencies, or as far as anybody is concerned, we place an ad in the local paper. We reach out via email to local departments, the building department, fire department, police department, library, DPW. I'm not really sure who else to reach out to in reference to public facility improvement. We try to hit all the key departments within the city. I know this is a social service agency, and they actually initially came to us, they came to our public hearing meeting with a potential social service project, and based on a conversation that him and I had, we determined that his project wouldn't be eligible because it would be considered under our administrative budget, and the administrative budget is covered under administrative costs. But he had learned through that public hearing that there's funding available for public facility improvements, and then he said, well, we need a ramp, and that's how that came about. It's not typical that we usually receive applications from outside agencies. Usually our applications come from within the city. Some of our city projects have been the Attleboro Library. We did the automatic door openers. We did the back doors here. We did the front doors for City Hall. So most public facility improvement projects are typically city departments that are the ones that apply.
So has this organization received funding before then, I guess?
Not since I began my tenure with the city. I can look back and see if they've received it for other
Like I said, I'm just concerned that just one person asked and then they get it. It kind of seems to me like maybe there could be, I'm not really sure.
Yeah.
I would hope that there would be kind of a menu of options to kind of see what the best need is.
Yeah, public facility improvement is an initiative for the community, so there would be no reason for us not to fund them just because they're the only application.
Just a point of clarification to Councilor Holmes, that we did Angel Park with that.
Yeah,
as
we
well.
did Angel Park.
All the sidewalks and that around that area.
Yeah, up and down Pine Street, School Street. Since I've been here, Emery Street, we did one side. See what else have we done since I've been here? Parker Street.
Well, I think it's just about, our department heads, whether it's the police and fire who are entering into the majority of the buildings, they're the ones who kind of keep track of that kind of information and know, if we have the opportunity to spend, these are things that would normally come out of our budget. I think we took the Angel Park from $300,000 down to $79,000 because, in part, due to CBDG. So right. I think that those are. Did I say that right?
Nobody ever says it right. It's okay.
My EBGBs from 1980.
I'm constantly correcting that, and Attleboro's a city, not a town. City, not a town.
Yeah, but I think that there's been a wealth of different programming that has come through, and I would, selfishly, as I would prefer to utilize that funding instead of having it be budget directed. So, and if there wasn't anything that was screaming out for this particular budget year, I think the ARC is always a great.
Yeah. I mean, nothing has been before us. There's nothing saying that throughout the program year, if we have an excess fund in one particular category, and we're faced at the end, towards the end of each program year, we're faced with what's called our timeliness test. If we have too much money available in our line of credit, HUD starts knocking at our door and wondering why we're not spending it. If we don't have a lot of projects moving money quickly, or if we anticipated on something happening and that project falls through for whatever reason, I'll be knocking on Mike Tyler's door and saying, hey, where do you got new sidewalks I can throw some money into, or, the police department or fire or whatever the case may be. So.
Thank you. So, but also, you have to have this budget and the recommendations, and you're up against a timeline. So you need to have something in that line item anyway for when you send it up to HUD. Am I correct?
That's correct. Okay. Yes. Yeah. And again, based on my review of the request, there's no reason not to fund it.
Okay. Good. No, thank you for the clarification.
Yeah.
Any other questions, Councilor Holmes?
Thank you. I think it would be great if you could connect with the Disability Commission next year, because they are the ones that have a pulse on maybe accessing buildings and what they're struggling with.
Sure.
Would be a great opportunity there, because
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. The only slight issue we may run into when funding city-owned buildings, when we're doing accessibility, is the ultimate use for the building. For example, we couldn't fund a school unless the school was used as a polling place or there were a lot of public meetings held at that school. Children with disabilities aren't a presumed benefit category. Only adults who have disabilities are presumed benefits. So even though you may need a ramp for children who have disabilities, it's not assumed that that child's family is low income, and the primary use of CDBG funds are for persons who are low income.
But they have a pulse.
But they have a pulse. Yeah, absolutely.
I think Mike Tyler certainly does, but I think that if they're having an issue with sidewalks or anything like that, they may be able to direct you to where the need is. So.
Sure, absolutely. And if we're faced with any, expenditure issues towards the end of the year, I'll absolutely make contact with them.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
I don't know if what's this slide? So we're proposing to put $371,316 into the Housing Rehabilitation / Affordable Housing Initiative. This will bring minimum housing properties up to minimum housing quality standards. This will also offer up the opportunity to do housing rehabilitation and acquisition of affordable housing units. As I did mention, we did receive an application for the acquisition of affordable housing complex. After reviewing the application, I determined that the application at this time is not complete. We are working closely with the developer and helping the developer complete that application, but I didn't feel comfortable at this time recommending that project to be budgeted because we simply don't have a completed application and it doesn't meet any completed requirements at this point. But we are working closely. It is an initiative for the city, and if at any time throughout the program year, they meet the minimum requirements to make this an eligible activity, then we're certainly ready to move forward with funding them at a requested amount. Funding will also be provided for a rehab consultant. That rehab consultant is required for us to have on staff. He does our housing inspections. He does our initial inspections, determine what the need of the property is. He does our cost estimates. We do our bid walkthroughs. He's essentially our eyes and ears on our construction site. He's our project manager. So there's funding set aside for that project, for that initiative as well. Okay, and last but certainly not least is the Social Service Agency funding. I apologize, there's a slight change here. There is not $81,422 available on that initiative. There's $70,451 you'll see on the budget, the attachment that I sent you of the overall budget. That dollar amount is based off of the proposed entitlement amount of $434,221 and also the approximate program income that we received in the current year, which is about $35,600. That's 15% of that total allocation, annual allocation plus our program income. HUD does cap us on that dollar amount. We received about $100,000 in requests this year for Social Service Agency, and this is probably the hardest part of my job, is going through these applications and determining who should get what. So we tried to make a clean cut across the board. We tried to level fund some activities. I gave you a handout showing what they received in the previous year, what they have requested, and what the recommended budget is. We're proposing to fund the continued support of the Literacy Center, child tuition reimbursement, subsidy tuition reimbursements through Robbins Child Care Center. These are child care vouchers for working families who else can't afford child care on their own. We have the Shine Counselor over at the Council on Aging. She helps our elderly population with Medicare forms, tax situations, credit counseling services for low-income family who are faced with credit issues, who need help just sort of budgeting their funds. When you're on a really fixed budget, it's difficult to sort of keep your head above water. These are really wonderful services that are provided through the counseling, credit counseling, American Credit Counseling, the Teen Drop-In Center. We fund two counselors to be on site at the Teen Drop-In Center for after school, someplace for our kids in some of our lowest income areas to go, have some fun, just hang out and do some fun activities throughout the day. Yes, Mr. Conti.
Mr. Conti.
Thank you, Ms. President. Did the Hebron Food Pantry not apply this year?
The Hebron Food Pantry did not meet the deadline, the submission deadline. She actually thought it was the week after. So she did not meet the deadline. I did tell her that I hadn't, at the point when we had our conversation, I hadn't reviewed the applications and I didn't know what the request for funding was at that point. I did tell her that if request for funding was less than what we had available, that I would contact her and let her know if I would put out another RFP for a 2-week window, allowing other social service agencies as well the opportunity to reapply. Unfortunately, I had $100,000 in requests and only $70,000 available to budget.
And if I may?
Yes.
Could you just quickly describe what the Resource Junction is?
Sure, yep, I was actually getting to that. That's a new social service agency, the Attleboro Interfaith Collaborative Center is requesting funding. They requested about $5,500. We're recommending $3,400. They are actually looking for supplies to help some of our extremely low income families or some of our homeless families. They're looking for blankets, laundry detergent, bus passes so that people can get to doctor appointments or to work. Various things. Mainly one of the biggest things, which I was almost shocked about, was laundry detergent. Just simple laundry detergent and laundry cards so that people can go do their laundry. That was one of the biggest areas of concern. Personal hygiene products, soap, shampoo, things of that nature. So that's what the request is coming in at.
Thank you.
Okay. Socks, blankets, underwear, supplies for our homeless.
Thank you.
And then just back up the list a little bit, South Coast Legal Services, elderly law, that always seems to be an area of concern during our public needs meeting, that there just isn't enough legal representation for the elderly, and what is available out there is very expensive. So that project gets utilized substantially when they're available at the Council on Aging.
Council Holmes,
Thank
question?
you. Yeah, I can see that there were some cuts that had to be made, but I really do appreciate that there's so many. It's like the children's program and then the Council on Aging and literacy. You're touching every population. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, and that's what I love about working here is there isn't any repetitive applications, and when people apply, they're like, oh, I really want to ask for more money, but I can't because I know that, Hebron needs it, or I know that this place needs it, or and I know that everybody's really concerned about what the other agency needs, and everybody works really well together. So it's really wonderful to see that.
Any other questions at this time? All right, thank you.
Attleboro is also part of a 14 community consortium. We receive home funds. The annual allocation for home funds to be divided upon these 14 communities is about $800,000 in the upcoming program year. Typically, what is used here in Attleboro is the closing costs and down payment assistance program. In the past, that program has been about $10,000. There's been discussion about offering up a little bit more money. They've had some success with that program and a little bit less success with their rehab program. So there's talk about possibly increasing the amount of closing costs and down payment assistance to low-income people who are looking to purchase their first home. So it would be more of a buy-down subsidy program as opposed to just a down payment assistance program. They're still working out the minutiae of that, so once I have the final sort of policy in place, I'll have that as a memo available to council to let them know, what that final outcome is and how much money would be available. I think the discussion is 25,000, but I'm not 100% sure yet, so I don't want to go public with that. So, all right. In the previous year, we actually helped the purchase of 3 single-family homes. 2 of them were condos through that program. Sir?
I was just curious
Yes.
how much interest there was in this program from Attleboro with closing costs, that kind of thing.
Well, they did, the program as a whole last year did 7, they assisted 7 different families, and 3 of the 7 came from Attleboro. So it seems pretty, there's some interest in it. I probably get maybe about a half a dozen calls a year in reference to it. Now, whether or not that actually manifests into an actual project is unknown. I try to get as much information as I can at the time of the call, whether or not they're income qualified, do they have any down payment assistance, have they taken a first-time home buyer classes, things that would require, that they would be required of them in order to qualify for the funds. I try to get as much information on the call, and I take some notes on it, and then I compare that based off of what the ultimate end result is. But I probably get about a half a dozen calls, and we assisted 3 last year, so.
That's great.
Yeah. So our 30-day comment period on the 2019 through 2023 5-year plan and our 2019 budget begins on April 10th. That budget will be available on the city's website and also available at the public library and here at the planning office. The submission for the 5-year plan deadline is May 15th. Hopefully, we will have our final numbers from HUD prior to that submission deadline, but I would respectfully ask that council vote to approve the submission of that 5-year plan along with the submission of the 2019 annual action plan to include language, if we do not have the final allocation, to include language that would allow for administration to increase or decrease the budget that's 25% less, or if we add or remove an activity, to allow the administration to proportionately increase those funds in each category and allow the mayor to submit that budget on behalf of the city prior to the submission deadline of May 15th.
So we could keep the public hearing open. This is April 2nd, 9th, through the 16th. And close it on the 16th, and that would not jeopardize your schedule and give you time to make or consider any changes that may occur, although I wouldn't expect any. Is that
The 16th of April?
correct?
Yes.
That would not jeopardize your schedule.
May 12th would be the final date where I would need a vote prior to May 12th.
May 12th, right.
Yes.
So if we kept it open to April 16th, that would not jeopardize your schedule.
That's correct. That's up to the council's discretion.
You're cutting it close.
Cutting it close?
Yes, you are. And if the concern is receiving the budget, we've done it in years past. We've closed it, and Dorothy has sent the budget down. And it was either last year or the year before we voted it with the stipulation because it was real tight.
Yeah, I don't want it to get tight. So I'll probably be asking to close the public hearing tonight.
There's a very, very, very good possibility that we're hearing from HUD that we're going to receive the same amount that we got last year with maybe a 1 or 2% increase or decrease. It'll be a very small amount. Actually, last year we received a 9% increase. If we receive 25% more or less, we're required to do this public hearing process all over again anyways. Or if we remove or add an activity that wasn't initially presented during our 30-day comment period, we're required to go through this process all over again anyways. And at that point, we would just ask HUD for an extension on the submission of our plan.
Okay, so Dorothy, I'll be asking the president to close the public hearing tonight on this stage.
Thank you.
And because I don't want to cause any unnecessary stress.
Thank you.
And if we need to open that up again, we will, so be it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Great. Any other questions for Dorothy at this time? Thank you. Council Kovas.
First of all, thank you for coming out. This was one of the most informative and professional presentations.
Thank you.
I just had a quick question. In the beginning, you mentioned an analysis on the impediments to further fair housing.
Yes.
Can you talk more about what those impediments were? And then the other question is you mentioned the top needs for affordable housing primarily being for seniors and then for families.
Correct.
Is that I guess that was just interesting to hear, but I'd love to hear about the impediments and more about that analysis, or if you could provide a copy of that.
Yeah, I can certainly provide you with a copy. It's on, Taunton is the lead agency of the consortium, and they were the agency that spearheaded the analysis of impediment. We hired a consultant from out of state that did the impediment for us. We were required to do this analysis because we haven't done one since 1999. So it's sort of good that we did it. The only two real communities impacted, of the 14 communities in the consortium, the only two real communities impacted were Taunton and Attleboro, because we're the largest communities within the consortium. The other communities like Lakeville and we're just smaller and just don't have a significant impact. The sort of impediment that stuck out for Attleboro was the lack of public transportation, especially in some of the lower income census tracts, or the lack of available bus routes in some of the lower income census tracts. And their sort of analysis of it, or their sort of suggestion to the issue was that, you know, maybe we talk to GATRA and see if we can offer more available bus routes within the lower income neighborhoods, so that there's more availability, that there were a higher percentage of people without vehicles who were lower income in Attleboro. So just really offering more bus routes. So I thought that was kind of good, considering that's really our only major problem. I mean, you look at cities like Boston or Worcester and Springfield, there are a lot larger impediments. So.
Thank you. It's fascinating.
Yeah, and there's nothing, based on our zoning, there's nothing written in any of our policy guidelines. Some of our other impediments are, physical handicapped, and throughout our consolidated plan and our regular plans, they've seen that we've funded multiple public facility improvement projects. So, we're addressing any of our needs, our accessibility needs that we may have. So, they really didn't see anything that was alarming other than we could have more bus routes in our lower income neighborhoods. So it's good to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Don.
Is there anyone else here to speak in favor? Is there anyone here to speak in opposition? Anyone to speak in opposition? Anyone neither for nor against? Anyone here neither for nor against? Mr. Chairman, do you see any reason to keep this public hearing open?
I do not.
Okay, that public hearing is also closed. Mr. Withers, would you kindly move on to the reading of the next
I certainly will.
public hearing?
The next public hearing is relative to the school property located at 135 County Street and the associated parking lot at 0 Chorus Street that are no longer needed for school purposes and may be transferred to the city. In accordance with Section 2-11.2 of the city ordinances, the city will declare that the old high school, 135 County Street, and the parking lot at 0 Chorus Street will be available for disposition. The old high school and 0 Chorus Street are currently assessed at $6,303,900 and $125,600 respectively.
Thank you. Is there anyone here to speak in favor? Is there anyone here to speak in favor? Anyone to speak in opposition? Is there anyone here to speak in opposition? Anyone neither for nor against?
Good evening, councilors. Robert Geddes, 27 Zarek Drive. I should know that by now. 27 Zarek Drive, at-large member of the school committee. Thank you for finally bringing this forward. This is obviously one of the most recognizable and historic buildings in the city. From a sentimental standpoint, we are certainly sad to have to turn it over, but we are excited for the potential that this site has for the city. Just a couple of notes that I wanted to share. Back in December, I had met with Mayor Hurrow about the sale of this building and mentioned that the public would probably like to say goodbye to this building one last time, and he did agree to that. There is a meeting later this month of a group of people that are planning to coordinate some farewell events for the 135 County Street building first, and eventually the current high school as well. This group does include a member of the Preservation Society that will take another walk through the building. In case you haven't heard, we did walk through privately with the Preservation Society back in the fall, and that led to us identifying an original marble clock to the building that will be carried over into the new building and hooked into the bell system for the new high school. So one of many pretty cool aspects. They did keep an eye on a couple of other things that I know they're going to want to go through again, just to see if there's anything else worth preserving or memorializing. I know that if I understand correctly, as part of this process, other departments have to declare that they have no use for the building, which certainly, while other departments may not have any use for the building, I would encourage any department heads, if they think either furniture or equipment in the building may be of use to them, to get in touch with Jason Parento. He has agreed to schedule at least a couple of walkthroughs with any department heads that may want to see if anything in there might be useful to their departments. I know in one closet on one of the catwalks, I had spotted some relatively decent sporting equipment that, for example, the rec department might be able to use. So they should get in touch with Jason if they would like to schedule that. That's all I have. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any questions? No? Thanks, Rob.
Awesome. Have a good night.
Thank you. Council Reynolds, do you see any reason to keep this public hearing open?
I would like to keep it open, as we did. I don't think that enough people are aware of what's going on. I just, as Rob made mention, it's a pretty historic property, and I'd like us to be sure that we're going to keep the integrity of the structure of the building, the outside building itself. I don't really care so much about the inside, but I just think that the exterior is important, and that we should make sure that the people of Attleboro are clearly aware that the possibility that it could be knocked down, and maybe we need to think a little bit more about that. So I'd like to wait and put it off another couple of weeks and see if some people from the community come forward and talk a little bit about what they think, whether they, or the reuse of the building when it's sold, and again, keeping the history of the outside. It says a lot about this community, and I think we so often just tear something down, and I have a little bit of an issue with that. I just don't think the public clearly understands what might happen.
Okay. Any other? No. Vice President Kuka?
Just as I did speak with Jason Parento last week. This isn't about keeping it open or closed, but I think it's important to just note this. You will note, like, residents in the city may notice that they're clearing some things out of that building because they are preparing it to be able to be shown at some point.
Yes.
So there will be like a transfer of cleaning anything out so that it is ready and prepared in the event that we do turn it over for the sale. So,
Yeah,
and not just so we're all aware, all of those things, whatever they're taking out is being stored at Highland Country Club.
Yeah, and I'm comfortable with that. I'm more concerned with the preservation of the exterior, as much as we can, as much as we are able to, in order to reuse the building or the buyer. We may not be able to, but I'd just like to keep it open. I don't think it would hurt us to keep it open.
Any other questions or comments, Councilor Black?
Wouldn't that be similar to Bliss School when we sold that? That was a condition of sale, I believe. I was on the council at that time.
There is
That they maintain a certain part of that building, you know, for the history. But that would come later, I would believe. Is there a later date when that was part of the sales agreement?
So may I answer?
Yes.
Council? So that comes during the procurement, and you can put stipulations on it, but what I guess I'm thinking is that I would like the general public to be able to also make a voice and opinion about it. I have my own personal opinion about it, but I think that people are not really paying attention. Our lives get hectic. They forget that it's coming up for sale. They're not really sure. I'd like to hear from the general public what they're thinking about trying to keep it intact on the outside, the integrity of the outside of the building, and that's why I'd like to keep it open a couple. But you're correct in that we could put stipulation on
Graduated in
it during the.
1960 from there, one of the last guys.
I know. So if I could, Councilor Cooper. Did you graduate from that? No, I graduated from that.
So we will continue that public hearing till April 16th.
Thank you
Mr.
so
Withers,
much.
would you kindly read the notice of the next public hearing?
The next public hearing is a continued public hearing relative to the following loan order for water main work on Reed Street. Ordered that $2,700,000 is appropriated for the permitting, bidding, construction, oversight, and construction costs associated with the replacement of approximately 8,800 linear feet of water mains, including the road restoration on Reed Street, Attleboro, Massachusetts, collectively the project, including the payment of all costs incidental or related thereto, that to meet this appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the mayor, is authorized to borrow $2,700,000 Chapter 29C of the General Laws and/or Section 8, Subsection 5 of Chapter 44 of the General Laws, or any other enabling authority, that the mayor is authorized to take any other action necessary or convenient to carry out this project. Any premium received by the city upon the sale of any bonds or notes approved by this order, less any such premium applied to the payment of the costs of issuance of such bonds or notes, may be applied to the payment of costs approved by this order in accordance with Chapter 44, Section 8, Subsection 5 of the General Laws, thereby reducing the amount authorized to be borrowed to pay such costs by a like amount.
Thank you. Is there anyone here to speak in favor of this loan order?
Hi, good evening. Courtney Wunschel, Superintendent, Attleboro Water Department. Our break history, I think, in the city, as everybody knows, we average quite a few main breaks, 2 to 3 dozen per year. Over some years, a good portion of these are on Reed Street. We've actually had 11 on the stretch of Reed Street in the last 4 years between West Street and County Street. The breaks are disruptive. Depending on which section of road, it can cut off service to the entire length of Reed Street, including all of the side streets. Depending on location, it can basically block traffic flow and, block emergency vehicles, rerouting them out to Route 1 or Tiffany Street. Reed Street, it's certainly not by itself. We had a study done over the last couple of years, completed in April of 2017 by Tater and Howard. They went out and actually looked, flow tested, did pipe crushing where we had main breaks, soup to nuts, throughout the entire city, and basically prioritized every inch of water main in the city. And this stretch of Reed Street was basically at the top for replacement.
Can you just refresh my brain on what section? Give me some landmarks of section.
Sure, it's from the West Street Fire Station out to the intersection with County Street.
Okay.
Like where it kind of makes the bend and then out to Pond.
Yep, so 14-ish, 16-ish maybe years ago, when that Laura Drive subdivision was put in, I feel like a condition, when I was on the Conservation Commission, a condition of that, because that ground wouldn't perk, for both sewer and water, that new water line was run from Laura Drive. Sewer and water was run from Laura Drive to West. That didn't happen? Was it only sewer?
Only sewer, to my knowledge.
Okay. I could have sworn it was water, too, at that time.
Yeah, the length of main is around 1950s, early 1950s.
Oh, okay. All right. No, that's helpful. I appreciate that. But I remember a lot of discussion, and they had to go way deep with that. I remember that. They had to go really deep, and it was sort of unusual. But it might have only been wastewater. Thank you. Council Conti, any questions? Any questions from the Council DeLisio, then Blair?
Thanks. Courtney, thanks for coming down tonight. A couple questions. Now, my understanding is that we're budgeting for these payments now, well, heading into the budget season. And this is certainly a project that needs to get done, as you alluded to. It impacts that neighborhood on a regular basis. A couple questions is, what is the length of the project? Not in terms of, the fire station to County Street, but in terms of when are we starting? When will it be completed? And, what do you project the impact to the residents would be?
Length of time for construction would start after July, and estimate is about 3 to 4 months. Minimal disruption to the customers. There would be a main bypass services run. So customers would be without water probably several hours.
Okay. And what about getting in and out of their driveways and back home and things of that nature?
Again, disrupted is minimal, just several hours.
Okay, one more if I could.
Sure.
Do you see this project having any impact on the water rate as we're getting ready to come into the budget season?
It could possibly. It did come up during budgeting.
Okay.
There is debt falling off this year. Actually, the debt payments are getting lower by just over $250,000 going into FY 2020.
Okay.
So that's helpful. Some of it is actually already funded. Roughly $102,000, just over $102,000 is actually already contracted for design with Tater and Howard.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Council Blair?
When will that be going out to bid?
Late spring into midsummer, expected.
Spring and going to start in July? Who's the engineering outfit?
Tater and Howard?
Excuse me?
Tater and Howard.
Okay.
I'm
Thank you.
sorry, I have a cold.
Just a point of clarification to Council Blair's. I'm confused. How can the project start before the bid comes back in? So if the bid is going to be going out midsummer and the work's going to start in July, that timeline doesn't mesh.
Mid-spring, sorry, mid-spring to early summer.
Okay, I feel much better about that, Courtney.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Courtney.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here to speak in favor? Anyone to speak in opposition? Anyone to speak in opposition of the loan order for the water main work on Reed Street? Anyone? Neither for nor against? Anyone neither for nor against? Councilor Conti, do you see any reason to keep this public hearing open?
Well, you know me. I certainly do not.
Perfect. That public hearing is closed. Thank you. Mr. Withers, would you kindly read the...
Certainly. The next public hearing is continued. Public hearing relative to the following loan order to upgrade the wastewater treatment plant located at 27 Pond Street North in Attleboro. Ordered that $1,500,000 is appropriated for the permitting, bidding, construction oversight, and construction costs associated with plant upgrades to the city's wastewater treatment facility located at 27 Pond Street North, Attleboro, Massachusetts, collectively the project, including the payment of all costs incidental or related thereto. That to meet this appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the mayor, is authorized to borrow $1,500,000 under Chapter 29C of the general laws and/or Section 7, subsection 1 of Chapter 44 of the general laws, or any other enabling authority. That the mayor is authorized to take any other action necessary or convenient to carry out this project. Any premium received by the city upon the sale of any bonds or notes approved by this order, less any premium applied to the payment of the costs of issuance of such bonds or notes, may be applied to the payment of costs approved by this order in accordance with Chapter 44, Section 7, subsection 1 of the general laws, thereby reducing the amount authorized to be borrowed to pay such costs by a like amount.
Thank you. Is there anyone here to speak in favor?
Good evening. Tom Hayes, Superintendent of Wastewater. My PowerPoint isn't that great compared to the last one you saw, but I thought I'd bring some pictures this time to show you what I was talking about. We did speak a month ago. The project consists of 3 phases. They are the gravity thickener 1 and 2 rebuild. They are the lime silo boot replacement and the 19 variable frequency drive replacements. The gravity thickeners and the lime silo boot are original to the facility. They were installed in the late 70s. They've run continuously for 40 years. So they've given us a good long life. And the VFDs were installed somewhere between 2004 and 2007 during the last major upgrade we did. And at this point, they are obsolete and you cannot get replacement components for them. So I would just show you a few pictures about what I'm talking about because it's kind of hard to explain in words if I can make this thing work right. This right here is a gravity thickener drive unit on the top. That was replaced in 2004 during the upgrade. That is the only piece of equipment in the gravity thickness that will remain. Once it comes down for construction, we'll take that out, we'll overhaul it in shop, and we'll paint it, and we'll refreshen it and do any maintenance required. The arrow pointing to the bridge is part of the bridge that's part of the construction. It runs the length of the gravity thickener. It's 30 feet long, and it supports all the mechanisms that hang underneath in the drive unit. We did gravity thickener 3 this past year, and we found out that when we took it apart, the bridge from sitting in place embedded in concrete for almost 40 years had deteriorated to the point where it was structurally unsound, so we needed to replace it. And it would be fabricated by the contractor, and they would install the new bridge. Part of the project for the gravity thickeners 1 and 2 is replacement of the ductile iron piping in the valve wells. It's all original, and it's extremely deteriorated and rusted, and basically it's on the verge of failing. So this would be part of the construction would be to replace any piping in the valve wells that basically look like this. These are some of the components that are going to change in each gravity thickener. You have the torque tube, which hangs from the gear reducer from the bridge, and that transfers all the torque and the drive to the rake assembly, which rotates within the gravity thickener. That's what plows the sludge around that's thickened there, collects it, drags it to the center where it's pumped into the sludge holding tanks for the dewatering process. The influent well would be replaced. That's original to the gravity thickeners. All the flow that goes into the gravity thickeners goes into the influent wells, and it's forced to go below the water level, so it settles readily without short-circuiting and going out of the thickener. The skim around, which runs the radius, runs half the distance of the gravity thickener, collects any solids or any floating scum that floats on the surface, and it's disposed of through the skim around. That would be replaced. Also to be replaced is the squeegee assembly on the end of that skim around and the scum beach assembly. So any of the solids that float, like grease, are squeegeed up the beach. They fall into the hopper, and then they're processed in the facility and removed. This is just another interior shot of the gravity thickeners, showing you the rake assembly with the pickets and the plows, the skim around the beach. And here's another shot of the bridge, showing you the bridge that would be replaced and where it's embedded in the concrete walls. This other part of this project we spoke about is the lime silo. The lime silo holds 90 tons of calcium carbonate quicklime. It's used in our process for dewatering, for pH control, alkalinity control, and it's a nutrients and a nitrification process. It's original to the facility, like I said. Inside the lime, I can find this. You can see this door right here. There's a room inside there, and inside that room is the lime silo shaker. All the lime that's in that silo basically gets delivered to 2 slakers below inside the plant. And it has to be sifted, almost like a flour sifter. There's a mechanism in there that shakes the silo, and it sifts it down, goes to a screw. It can either be run forward or reverse, and it drops through a chute into one of the 2 slakers in the room below, or it's turned into a lime slurry. The lime silo boot, it's kind of hard to see. We got a better picture of it. This is inside of the room. You can see we have patches in it. It's a rubber boot. You have a cone that comes down. You have another cone underneath it, and it's connected by a system of shock mounts. And it's made to shake back and forth, and it's connected by a rubber bladder that runs the the diameter of it, and that keeps the lime contained. That's original. It's made out of rubber. It's 40 years old. It's dry rot. It's ruptured in several places. We've done an attempt to patch it with red rubber gasket material, but it leaks. Here's the patch. And this is what it leaks. This is actually in that room, in that door that I showed you. Normally this is open grading to the Slaker room below where employees work, and it's open to the plant. We've actually covered it over with plastic sheeting to contain the lime that falls into that room continuously, and people have to go in there, they have to suit up, and they have to shovel the lime out of there, take it down off the roof, and dispose of it. It's extremely dangerous material to work with. I showed Councilman Conti Saturday what it can do to you with just a little bit of moisture, how it melted a styrofoam cup within a matter of a second. I put in a little bit of moisture in it. And so it's a hazardous situation they're working with. We need to repair it. Some more shots of the interior. And third on the list is the variable frequency drives. The variable frequency drives are the large VFDs that control the motor speed and start and stopping of all the large lift pumps that convey flow through the facility. We have 19 of them, and we have a lot of other small ones that we're not looking to change. Those are easily to be changed in-house. But the large VFDs, we need to contract someone to come in and change because we can no longer get components for them. Like if you see the front, you can see the keypads over there. That's how you would set up, program, and change the parameters of the VFDs. Those keypads are no longer made by Siemens Robicon. You can't get them anymore. So if we have a VFD where the keypad doesn't work, we have to steal one from another VFD. Electricians have to bring it over, wire it in to make a change to that VFD, then bring it back and put it in the other one again. Because you can't get parts anymore for those. We can no longer get parts. And if anybody wants to know what a variable frequency drive is, here's the definition. Everybody all set with them? This is the inside components of the VFD. The upper components, the printed circuit boards, that's basically the computers. Those are no longer manufactured by Siemens Robicon. We have a few spares, but that's all we have. And once they go, then basically they're unserviceable again. You can't do anything with them. The lower components like the transformers and the SERs and stuff like that, you can still get those, but without the brain, it's a useless box. These are some of the pumps that these VFDs control. These are 3 out of the 4 large second stage lift pumps that they would control the start, stopping, and they would vary the speed from max to minimum speed based upon the amount of flow coming into the facility. If one pump wasn't enough, they would call in a second pump. They would call in a third or fourth pump, and then they would shut the pumps down as the flow in the well started to drop. Here are three of the 4 RAS VFDs, same manufacturer. Basically, they have the same keypad, same computer board. They're interchangeable, luckily, but they're much smaller. The components are much smaller. They're much smaller horsepower. Instead of 60 horsepower, now we're talking 15 to 40 horsepower with these. There are 15 of these smaller ones, and there is the 4 large ones I showed you before for second stage where the biggest pumps are. And that's about it for my slides.
All right, question. Councilor Holmes and then Delicio.
Thank you. So when you said some of the electronics are like obsolete,
Yes.
have you been trained on what will be replaced then, or are you?
When we do the upgrade, the contractors, part of their responsibility is to do on-site training. Yeah, we will get training during the construction. That's one of the contractors' responsibility is to train us on the new equipment and to provide us with operations and maintenance manuals and make sure that everybody knows, how to operate them. Yeah.
So 40 years is a long time.
Yes.
What would be the time frame for this to last once this is all replaced, I guess? Is there
The VFDs, which component are you talking?
Any of them?
It depends. Like a VFD, generally it's progress that kind of kills them because they become obsolete because it's electronics. 10 to 15 years. The other components, the larger components like the gravity thickeners, generally the life of a wastewater piece of equipment is generally 20 years, and that's when you're thinking about retrofitting, changing it out, is 20 years is considered the life. Because remember, most of this equipment runs 24 hours a day. It never shuts off. The only time we shut these things off is preventative maintenance, or in the case of the one I had pictures of, it had a catastrophic failure. Right after the one we rebuilt last year went online, number 3, number 1 failed. the wear rings let go on it, and the torque tube basically ceased to operate. So otherwise, they run around the clock. So about 20 years.
Thank you.
Councilor Delosio.
Thank you. First of all, kudos to your team. I mean, to be able to still get the life you've got out of that, I think that says something.
Yeah, we've gotten a lot of life out of that plant.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Sorry I missed the tour on Saturday. It's been a while. I went down there several years ago with Mr. Kennedy. But my question, so you talk about catastrophic failure. What does that mean? So if I'm watching at home and I see the
Basically,
pictures.
anything that's going to render a piece of equipment to the point where we cannot repair it in-house is a catastrophic failure. We need to be able to repair just about anything, and we do. But you get to the point where you can't fix it anymore. They're at the point now, they're so old. I mean, you've been underwater and wastewater for 40 years. You're going to be a bit rusty. There's only so much torching you can do to repair things, and we're at that point now. The metal's fatigued, and it's not even fixable to the point where you can't take things apart and put them back together, because
Right.
you're going to have to cut it open with a torch, and you're not going to get it back together anymore.
And of course, things are obsolete. They come, they go. I get
Yeah,
that too.
the gravity thickness are actually going to be made for us by Walker Process. We made the original ones. It's going to take 20 to 24 weeks to manufacture them. They have to fabricate them for us because they have to go back to the old blueprints, which luckily they have, and they're going to make them for us.
So their product needs to fit.
It has to
Your
fit
plan.
perfectly. Yeah, it has to be a retrofit. It has to be able to drop right in. Yep.
And when do you expect that this is going to stop?
We're hoping to be out to bid sometime mid-June, so we can hopefully get construction going sometime in July, August. There's a lot of lead time on this stuff. Wastewater components, most stuff is, like I said, anywhere from 10 or 12 weeks to some of the stuff is 20, 24-week lead time on a lot of these items because it has to be made for the application. You just don't have stuff like that size sitting on a shelf somewhere.
Sure. And then just last, if I may. Again, do you foresee that this could impact the rate?
Not this year, no. We have $486,000 of premium money is being used. This whole project is actually just under $2 million. That is being put towards the project. That's actually already paid for the engineering, for the design engineering. We have on a contract right now that's ongoing. And we do have debt falling off this year, and we'll have more falling off next year. I can't say for 21, but I know for 20 it should not affect the budget. Yeah.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate the presentation. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Thank you. Oh, Councilor Dolan, I'm sorry.
That boot,
Yes.
are the guys in there shoveling that because of the cracks and?
Yeah, because it leaks, and we need to keep, any moisture gets in there whatsoever, and what'll happen is you'll have a chemical reaction, and like I said, I showed Councilor Conti on Saturday, I put some calcium carbonate in a Dunkin' Donuts cup, one of their coffees is, put about an ounce of water in there, and within a matter of seconds, that it started bubbling, that cup totally melted to the floor. So if you have any moisture in there, it's going to melt through what we put on the plastic tarp we put down to contain the dust. It's going to melt right through it and into the room. If that does fail, I have up to 90 tons of calcium carbonate that will pour into the treatment plant building. Yeah.
So, does that have to be made for us? Is the lead time on that like 20 weeks or anything?
The thing with, no, the lead time's not on that. It's such a specialty item, even though it's the smallest part of this whole project, and maybe one of the hardest one to find somebody that can come in and do it. And timing-wise, we have about a day and a half I can shut down the system. I have to empty all 90 tons out of there, use it all up, which means I have to shut down some of my processes for a day and a half. And that's about all I'm going to give them to get in there, replace the boot. Then I have to start filling that silo back up with lime again so I can start processing again. That's going to be the thing, is logistics of pulling this off. That and finding somebody that can do it, that will do it, because it's an odd. How many people work on silos?
So what do you think the lead time is on that?
I honestly don't know, and something like that. I don't think the lead time for the material is going to be as hard as finding a contractor that's qualified and actually would work on it. It's going to be a hard time finding somebody to work on that, I think.
Yeah.
Even the engineers right now are kind of scratching their heads and trying to figure out who they're going to approach with this one to work on it.
Yeah, I'm finding that concerning. But I'm sorry I missed the tour, which is my favorite tour in the city, but I couldn't be there. But thank you.
No problem.
Any other questions or comments? Thanks, Tom.
All right, thank you.
Is there anyone else here to speak in favor? Is there anyone to speak in opposition? Is there anyone here to speak in opposition? Anyone neither for nor against? Anybody here neither for nor against? Seeing none, Council Conti, do you see any reason to keep this public hearing
I
open?
certainly do not.
Thank you. That public hearing is also closed. Mr. Withers, would you kindly read
The next one.
last
Okay, and finally,
public hearing?
we have a continued public hearing relative to the application for a special permit pursuant to Section 17-10.15, registered marijuana dispensary uses of the revised ordinances from Major Bloom LLC, 50 Loring Street, Hyde Park, Mass., to operate a marijuana business for property located at 20 John Williams Street, Attleboro, Mass. Said premises being Assessors Plat number 33, lots number 221A, 221C, 221A, 221C, 221D, and 222, located in an industrial zoning district and having an area of 3.62 plus acres.
Great. We're just continuing, right?
Continue it, yes.
Okay. So that public hearing is going to be continued to May 7th?
Yes, please.
And then, were they planning to address the council tonight? No.
They're available if we had questions, but
Okay. So that public hearing is continued till May 7th. And we can...
Okay. So that ends those.
Voice my concerns.
Moving on to the mayor's communications.
April 2nd, 2019, dear municipal councilors, I respectfully submit a communication from Fire Chief Scott T. LaChance regarding the need for funds to properly budget and account for wages earned through June 30th, 2019. Therefore, I hereby request your honorable body transfer $19,200 from account Citywide Reserve Fund for compensation 53rd week to accounts as follows: $13,500 to account fire salaries and wages, $700 to account fire night differential, $5,000 to account fire overtime. Copies in your packets.
Public Safety and Emergency Management Committee, please.
I respectfully submit a communication from Fire Chief Scott T. LaChance regarding the need for funds to purchase supplies to perform preventive maintenance and repairs of the fire apparatus and vehicles. Therefore, I hereby request your honorable body transfer $2,500 from account Citywide Reserve Fund for transfer to account fire supplies vehicles. Upon approval, the available balance in reserve fund for transfer will be $136,710.57. Copies in your packets.
Public Safety Emergency Management Committee, please.
I respectfully submit a communication from Fire Chief Scott T. LaChance regarding the need to replenish funds from accounts that were needed to make payments due to unanticipated retirements. Therefore, I hereby request your honorable body transfer $67,531.63 from account Citywide Reserve Fund for transfer to accounts as follows: $10,685 to account fire salaries and wages, $41,846.63 to account fire sick leave severance, $15,000 to account fire earned time payments. Upon approval, the available balance in reserve fund for transfer will be $69,178.94. Copies in your packets.
Public Safety Emergency Management Committee, please.
I respectfully submit a communication from Director of Veteran Services Ken Badicher regarding the need for funds to cover salaries for the remainder of fiscal year 2019. Therefore, I hereby request your honorable body transfer $42.97 from account Citywide Reserve Fund for transfer to account Veteran Salary and Wages. Upon approval, the available balance in reserve fund for transfer will be $69,135.97. Copies in your packets.
Budget and Appropriations Committee, please. I threw a curveball to you there. I think I wrote the wrong thing, Steve.
What's that?
I think I wrote the wrong thing when we were doing this
That's
earlier.
right. I respectfully submit a communication from City Collector Deborah Marcaccio regarding the need for funds for postage for the remainder of fiscal year 2019. Therefore, I hereby request your honorable body transfer $3,000 from account Citywide Reserve Fund for transfer to account collector postage. Upon approval, the available balance in reserve fund for transfer will be $66,135.97. Copies in your packets.
Budget and Appropriations Committee, please.
I respectfully submit a communication from Superintendent of Public Works, Michael Tyler, regarding the need for funds to make repairs to roadways and sidewalks due to water breaks and other needed patchwork. Therefore, I hereby request your honorable body appropriate $29,642 from account undesignated fund balance, free cash, general government, to account Public Works trench repairs. Copies in your packets.
Public Works Committee, please.
I respectfully submit a communication from Veterans Agent Ken Batature regarding the donation of $50 in Stop and Shop gift certificates from Lori Scales. This donation was given in honor of Gus's random act of kindness to celebrate World Down Syndrome Day on March 21st. In accordance with Section 1-12 of the revised ordinances of the City of Attleboro, I hereby request your honorable body to accept these generous donations to the City of Attleboro. Copies in your packets.
City Property and Claims Committee.
I respectfully submit a communication from Superintendent of Wastewater Thomas Hayes regarding the need for funds for the replacement of the second stage pumping station HVAC unit. Therefore, I hereby request your honorable body appropriate $19,200 from account Wastewater Enterprise Fund retained earnings to account Wastewater Enterprise Fund improvements to HVAC. This amount includes a 20% contingency. Copies in your packets.
Public Works Committee, please.
I respectfully submit it to your honorable body the city's capital improvement program for fiscal year 2020 through 2024. We look forward to working with the municipal council in the coming weeks to review the data submitted. Furthermore, I request your honorable body to hold a public hearing at the appropriate time. Copies in your packets.
Capital Improvements and City Development.
Call for a public hearing April 16th.
Thank you, sir. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Let's see. I respectfully submit a communication from Legal Secretary Allison Wood regarding equipment that the Department of Public Works would like to declare surplus. Therefore, I hereby request your honorable body to declare the following as surplus and available for disposition. Copies in your packets. We have a 1987 Bombardier sidewalk tractor, VIN number 0018710002 in very poor condition, and a 2000 International Utility Trailer, VIN number 1JKDLA403YA000768 in very poor condition.
City Property and Claims Committee.
Sincerely, Paul Haru.
Thank you. And we'll move on to the other communications.
Yes, we have three tonight. We have an application for an amended license to store flammable and combustible liquids for Pedro's Service Station, 21 South Avenue, Attleboro.
License Committee, please. And Council Dolan, would you like to call for public hearing on April 16th?
Yes, please.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes. We'll have a public hearing on that matter April 16th.
We also received an application of amended license to store flammable and combustible liquids from Amalgamated Financial Group of 2050 Plainfield Pike, Prince Rhode Island, for 237 Washington Street, Attleboro.
That also referred to the License Committee, and Council Dolan, would you like to call for a public hearing on that matter on May 7th?
Yes, please.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That was what, May 7th? Okay. And we received an application for Class 2 license from LaPierre Auto Repair located at 97 Emery Street, Attleboro, for buying and selling secondhand motor vehicles.
License Committee, and we need a public hearing for that? No.
No,
Okay. Thank you.
that's all.
Thank you. And at this time, I'd entertain a motion to go into Committee of the Whole.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We're in Committee of the Whole. If there's anybody here that would like to address the city on any, council on any issue of city business, now is the time. I don't see anybody, but I will recognize Councilor Blair at this time.
Thank you. Mr. President, it's with great sadness that we lost a dear friend of this council, and look around, he's not in the audience. Mr. Frank Ballou passed away today after a very progressive illness over the last 2 weeks. In fact, Councilor Sarah has talked to him a week ago, less than a week ago. It's just, Frank has been a figure around City Hall pretty near since I've been here, regular basis, passing him in the hall. I know Frank sometimes might have been a little pushy, but he had the city's interest in heart. And I had a little conversation with him right in front of Sarah a couple of weeks ago about the marijuana that was his current passion. He's going to be truly missed because no matter what, Frank was a good guy, great guy. I enjoyed joking with him, busting him a little, you know. and I'll truly miss him. I know at times he could have been a little aggravating, but it wasn't because he didn't have the city's interest at heart. And it was a shock to me today when I heard about it. So to his family and to those close to him and know him, I know all our sympathy from the whole council goes out to the family. And he will be missed.
Yes, he will. Thank you for that, Peter. I appreciate it. And today, when I contacted the admin, Virginia, and then I contacted Vice President Parika and then the Ward 1 counselor, everybody was obviously shocked, but Virginia said she was going to make a packet for him because he always asked every meeting.
Yes.
He wanted the docket, the agenda, the motions, he wanted it all.
Yeah.
And so tonight, in memory, she did put out in the audience on the seat that he normally sits at his packet as a memoriam to Francis Baluta, 120 Carrier Avenue. They all knew his address by heart, and when there was an issue, he was the first one generally to call you. We all appreciated that, and we also got sometimes frustrated by it, but we appreciated it in the end.
He spent a lot of time at that podium. He did. Almost as much time as we've spent a number of times as we have had the meeting. So
Yeah.
he will be missed.
He will. Thank you. At this time, I'd entertain a motion to arise.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And we will go on to the committee reports, and we'll begin with Council Parika for Ms. Jackson tonight.
Sure. Reporting from the Public Works Committee. I have one motion this evening from the docket of April 2nd, 2019. I move to approve the request of the mayor to purchase parts and materials to repair the mechanical bar screen at the wastewater treatment and hereby request this honorable body transfer $30,000 from account wastewater enterprise fund to account wastewater enterprise fund supplies equipment maintenance.
Second.
Thank you. Motion's in order. Any questions or comments?
I believe Councilor Jackson covered this in depth and in detail with alluding to fragrance and things like that as of last week, so I don't think we need to discuss it any longer.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? This requires a roll call vote, and we'll begin with Council Waterman.
Mr. Waterman.
Yes.
Mr. Conti.
Yes.
Mr. Cobus.
Yes.
Vice President Parika.
Yes.
Mr. Delicio.
Yes.
Ms. Dolan.
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds.
Yes.
Ms. Holmes.
Yes.
Mr. Blair.
Yes.
President Cooper.
Yes.
10 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you. Motion passes.
That completes the business for the Public Works Committee, and call for a committee meeting at the next appropriate time.
Great. Thank you. Council Waterman.
Okay. Reporting from the Personnel and Human Services Committee from the docket of April 2nd, 2019. I move to approve the request of the mayor to confirm the following reappointments to positions and for terms as indicated. It's a long list. Henry Riley III to the Board of Election Commissioners, 3 years, expiring February 2022. Randall Vincent, alternate inspector of wiring, 1 year, expiring February 2020. Laban O'Brien, alternate inspector of wiring, 1 year, expiring February 2020. Stephen Nunes, assistant inspector of gas piping and gas APP, I don't know what that is.
Brian does.
3-year term, expiring February 2022. Madeline McNeely, appointed to the Council on Aging as the director, 3-year term, February 2022. Gary Arazian as director of Planning and Development, 2-year term, expiring February 2021. Nicholas Wiley, appointed to as the environmental planner for 2-year term, expiring February 2021. Scott LaChance, appointed as forest warden, 1-year term, expiring February 2020. Christopher Quinn, appointed as health officer, 1-year term, expiring February 2020. Kyle Heaney as being appointed as the lockup keeper, 1-year term, February 2020. Catherine Rigo as parking administrator, 1-year term, February 2020 expiration. Derek Corsi as Superintendent of Parks and Forestry, 3-year term, expiring February 2022.
Second.
Thank you.
Thank you. Motion's in order. Any other questions or comments?
No.
Great. Voice vote is required. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Opposed? Motion passes.
President Cooper, before he reads this next communication, I'm going to recuse myself.
Great, thank you.
From the docket of April 2nd, 2019. I move to approve the request of the mayor to confirm the reappointment of Edward Perica Jr. as the alternate inspector of wiring, term to expire February 2020.
Second.
Thank you.
Thank you. Motion's in order. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, this requires a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Motion passes.
From the docket of April 2nd, 2019, I move to approve the request of the mayor to confirm the appointment of Eleanor Parento, 1355 West Street, Attleboro, to fill an expired term on the Council on Substance Abuse Prevention, term to expire February 2022.
Second.
Thank you. Motion's in order. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, this requires a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Motion passes.
Also from the docket of April 2, 2019, I move to approve the request of the mayor to confirm the appointment of Greg Withers, 22 Daggett Road, to fill an unexpired term on the Council on Substance Abuse Prevention, term to expire February 2021.
Second.
Thank you. Motion is in order. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, this requires a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Motion passes.
Also from the docket of April 2, 2019, I move to approve the request of the mayor to confirm the appointment of Brian Hatch of 34 Silver Birch Road in Attleboro to fill an unexpired term on the Conservation Commission, term to expire February 2020.
Second.
Thank you. Motion's in order. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, this requires a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye. Opposed.
Yep. Councilor Blair is opposed, so motion passes 9-1.
And finally, from the docket of April 2, 2019, I move to approve the request of the mayor to confirm the appointment of Andrew Acosta of 30 Falcon Drive, Attleboro, to fill an expired term on the Municipal Building Commission, term to expire February 2022.
Second.
Thank you. Motion's in order. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, this requires a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Motion passes.
That concludes the business of the Personnel and Human Services Committee, and we will gather again at the next appropriate time.
Great. Thank you. Councilor Conti.
Thank you, Mr. President. Reporting for Capital Improvement and City Development Committee. The capital improvement book has been delivered. I hope all councils will read it cover to cover. If you can sleep at night, this is a great aid. But seriously, it's really well done. This is an awesome document that gives you an incredible view of the city. And for the public, we're putting it online, so you can see it online. And if you want to know what it takes to run a city of 45,000 people, it's in there. And so we have no business to bring before the council this evening other than to study the book, and we call for a meeting at the next appropriate time.
Excellent. Thank you. Councilor Kovas.
Zoning and land use doesn't have any business tonight. We call for a committee meeting at the next appropriate time.
Vice President Fricker.
Thank you, President Cooper. Traffic Transportation does not have any business this evening, but I just wanted to make two brief comments. One, we do have a Traffic Study Commission meeting scheduled for Thursday. There is the potential that we won't have a quorum We've had some circumstances with some of the individuals on that. However, so just, I'll have Virginia send out an email letting you know if it's on or off. We will be taking up, it is expected that we'll be taking up the speed cushion discussion, proposed legislation, and I invite any of you to come and hear what they have to say with regards to that. In addition to that, I'd like to remind my fellow counselors as well as those at home that Thursday at the Park and Forestry Building in County Square, or at Capron Park, is the MDAR public hearing with regards to the proposed vegetative plant management program that is being submitted to the state. It was written by Derek Corsi with assistance from Nick Wiley. There are copies that will be there. There's plenty of time for some discussion, but it is the public hearing from 11 to 12:30 on Thursday, and I hope that people will be able to attend. It is an important piece of information, and if spraying and pesticides is something that is important to you, you may want to try and find a way to attend that meeting. Other than that,
Thank you.
I call for a committee meeting at the next appropriate time.
Great.
Thank you. Reporting for Budget and Appropriations Committee, I have three pieces of business tonight from the docket of April 2nd, 2019. I move to approve the request of the mayor to transfer $6,000 from protective inspection salary to account protective inspection professional services for funds to pay an alternative electrical inspector due to the retirement of the electrical inspector.
Second. Thank you. Motion is in order. Any questions or comments?
None.
Hearing none, a roll call vote is required, and we'll begin with Councilor Blair.
Mr. Blair?
Aye.
I'm sorry?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Mr. Delissio?
Yes.
Vice President Perica?
Yes.
Mr. Kobus?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
President Cooper?
Yes.
10 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Thank you. From the docket of April 2nd, 2019, I move to approve the request of the mayor to transfer $200 from account budget and administration maintenance software to account budget and administration longevity for needs to cover a longevity payment.
Second.
Thank you. Motion's in order. Any questions or comments?
We discussed this at 6:45.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, a roll call vote is required, and we'll begin with Councilor Waterman.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Mr. Kobus?
Yes.
Vice President Perica?
Yes.
Mr. Delissio?
Yes.
Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
President Cooper?
Yes.
10 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Finally, from the docket of April 2nd, 2019, I move to approve the request of the mayor regarding the EPA's NPDES2 general permit, also known as MS4, and the need for a consultant to work on the update for the local stormwater management ordinance, as well as regulations for the Planning Board and Conservation Commission to be in compliance with the current NPDES2. Therefore, the mayor hereby requests your honorable body to appropriate $33,240 from account undesignated fund balance free cash general government to account citywide professional services.
Second.
Thank you. Motion is in order. Any questions or comments?
Just again, this is something that we need to do from the federal government. This will ensure our compliance, and this is for just this phase, and I would expect something similar this time next year as well.
Great. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, a roll call vote is required, and we'll begin with Councilor Blair.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Mr. Delissio?
Yes.
Vice President Perica?
Yes.
Mr. Kobus?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
President Cooper?
Yes.
10 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you. Motion passes.
That is all the business I have tonight for business and appropriations. Would like to say rest well, Mr. Blute, you will be missed. And with that being said, I would like to call for a committee meeting next week at the appropriate time.
Great. Councilor Dolan.
Reporting for License Committee, I have 3 motions this evening. From the docket of April 2nd, 2019, I move to approve the application dated March 19, 2019 for a hawkers and peddlers license from Adam Pelagi of Pelagi Brothers Ice Cream, LLC of Benefit Street in Pawtucket.
Second.
Thank you. Motion's in order. Any questions or comments? Voice vote is required. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Motion passes.
From the docket of April 2nd, 2019, I move to approve the application dated March 19, 2019 from Robert Pelagi of Pelagi Brothers Ice Cream, LLC of Delta Drive in Pawtucket for a hawkers and peddlers license.
Second.
Thank you. Motion's in order. Any questions or comments?
None.
This also requires a voice vote. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Motion passes.
From the docket of, April 2nd, 2019, I move to approve the application for Ring a Bell to sell products dated March 19, 2019, from Robert Pelagi of Pelagi Brothers Ice Cream LLC of Delta Drive, Pawtucket.
Second.
Thank you. Motion's in order. Any questions or comments? This also requires a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
That's all the business I have for License Committee tonight, and I'd like to call for a committee meeting at the next appropriate time.
Great, thank you. Councilor Reynolds.
Thank you. Reporting for City Property and Claims Committee, I have 4 items from the docket of April 2nd, 2019. The first one is I move to approve the request of the mayor to accept the generous donations to the City of Attleboro Collector's Office from Bristol County Savings Bank of 3 monitors, 3 stands, and 3 USB connectors with an estimated value of $575 to be compatible with software used by the bank's lockbox company.
Second.
Thank you. Motion's in order. Any questions or comments?
No, I do not.
Voice vote is required. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
I move to approve the request of the mayor to accept the generous donations to the Health Office and Outreach Office of $625 and grocery store gift cards. The gift cards were donated by the Holiday Spirit Committee.
Second.
Thank you. Motion is in order. Any questions or comments?
No, I do
Again, again, a voice vote is required. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Motion passes.
I move to approve the request of the mayor to declare the following fire department vehicle as surplus and available for disposition. It's a 2005 Ford Crown Vic. I read the VIN number last week. There's 157,000 miles, and it's in poor condition.
Second.
Thank you. Motion's in order. Any questions or comments?
I do not.
Roll call vote is required, and we'll begin with Council Waterman.
Mr. Waterman.
Aye.
Mr. Conti.
Yes.
Scovis.
Yes.
Vice President Perica.
Yes.
Mr. Delissio.
Yes.
Ms. Dolan.
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds.
Yes.
Ms. Holmes.
Yes.
Mr. Blair.
Yes.
President Cooper.
Yes.
10 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you. Motion passes.
And my 4th item, I move to approve the request of the mayor, accept the generous donations to the City of Attleboro of $75 and Stop and Shop gift cards from the Attleboro Elks Lodge, number 1014, to the Veterans Office.
Second.
Thank you. Motion's in order. Any questions or comments?
No.
This requires a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Motion passes.
Well, that is all I have from City Property and Claims Committee, but I would call a meeting at the next available time.
Great. Council Holmes.
Thank you. Reporting for ordinance, election, and legislative matters. From the docket of January 15, 2019, I move to approve the request of the mayor and DPW to change the revised ordinance of the City of Attleboro, Section 11-9, discharge of water. The amendment addition reads as follows: 11-9.4. No person shall discharge or cause to be discharged surface or any other water upon any street, sidewalk, or public place, either by collecting the same upon his premises and discharging it upon any street, sidewalk, or other public place, or by changing the grade surface of his premises so as to increase the amount of rate of discharge upon any street, sidewalk, or other public place at such times or in such quantities that the water so discharged may freeze on any street, sidewalk, or other public place, so as to cause hazard to the traffic in the public way as determined by the Superintendent of Public Works.
Second.
Thank you.
Any questions or comments?
I spoke to Mr. Tyler again about this. There were some questions last week about whether there should be a fee or if there needed to be anything else. He does feel like this will solve what he's trying to do right now. Basically, the biggest change is that it includes Superintendent of Public Works, and it changes from impure water to discharge of water. The issue is that residents were getting really focused on, this isn't impure water, it's just rainwater, it's okay to do this. So this, he believes, has the language to do what he wants it to do.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, roll call vote is, Councilor Blair.
I hope it works out for him, but I personally think that there's got to be a penalty involved in this somewhere along the line, and it won't get adhered to. So, I mean, I'm good with it the way it stands, but without some type of enforcement penalty, I mean, money, I'm afraid it won't get adhered to.
Thank you. Councilor Sorry. Vice President
I'll
Parika and then...
cede to Councilor Kobus.
This is within the offenses section, and so each of those are, there's a general catch-all of offense thing that
Where
covers
is
all
that?
of these. I can find it, but just there is a penalty associated with this, in the same way that any violation of anything within that offenses section is covered.
Go ahead.
So I believe that's correct. I think it's $50 and then it goes, it's $50 for each offense or $50 and then goes to 100, but I can get clarification.
So it's included?
Yes. This is so that basically he's hoping that there's certain individuals where he can write a letter to and it will have a little bit more teeth to it. And it also includes Superintendent of Public Works. He's had the concern where he would go out and people would focus in on a certain part of the ordinance and say, well, you really don't even oversee this or something of that nature. So he's trying to just include himself with the goal of trying to work with residents, especially that have a small plot of land. He's not trying to make things difficult. At the same time, it's causing car accidents, and we're having to salt the streets and take care of that. So we have to have a balance here.
So we do, because we can utilize technology on the council floor these days, Councilor Kobus did pull it up, and it is section 11-18.4 penalties, ish. Whoever violates any of the provisions of this ordinance shall be punished by a criminal fine under Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 40, Section 21, as amended, of $100 for the first offense, $200 for the second, and $300 for the third offense. And that is kind of like that catch-all in there. So that's that if I may continue, like that was what I was asking for last week, because I want him to be able to be successful. I want him to be able to enforce this. I want him to be able to tell the residents that this is how it needs to be, but that you also need that, who's the enforcing agent? Is it a civil or criminal offense? And how do you get that back up? So that all seems to be reasonable. We could do a little bit more research on that at another time, but that hopefully should satisfy Councilor Blake. There is.
And I would love to see him show some authority and a resident listen. You know, I don't want to see him go out and be a Gestapo about it, but, you know, some people, you just need a little bit of exercise where it hurts to get a repeat offender. So I'm glad that's in there. I thought it had to be attached to that particular ordinance.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, this requires a roll call vote, and we'll begin with Councilor Blair.
Mr. Blair.
Yes.
Ms. Holmes.
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds.
Yes.
Mr. DeLisio.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Ms. Dolan.
Yes.
Mr. DeLisio.
Yes.
I didn't put my glasses on. See, I just saw the D. Vice President Parika.
Yes.
Mr. Kobus.
Yes.
Mr. Conti.
Aye.
What's that? What did you say? Mr. Waterman.
Yes.
President Cooper.
Yes.
10 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you. Motion passes.
That's all the business for this evening. I'll call them meeting in next appropriate time. Thank you.
Councilor Blair.
For Public Safety Emergency Management, I think I got 5 this evening, from the docket of April 2nd, 2019. I move to approve the request of mayor regarding the need for funds to purchase tourniquets and duty belt carrying cases for the police officers. Therefore, the mayor hereby requests his honorable body transfer $6,828.96 from account 1124100-5783000 Citywide Reserve Fund for transfer to account 1210100-558208 Police Supplies.
Second.
Thank you. Motion's in order. Any questions or comments?
No, I think we discussed it in committee at length last week.
Great. This requires a roll call vote, and we'll begin with Councilor Waterman.
Mr. Waterman.
Yes.
Mr. Conti.
Yes.
Mr. Kobus.
Yes.
Vice President Parika.
Yes.
Mr. DeLisio.
Yes.
Ms. Dolan.
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds.
Yes.
Ms. Holmes.
Yes.
Mr. Blair.
Yes.
President Cooper.
Yes.
10 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Thank you. From the docket of April 2nd, 2019, I move to approve the request of mayor regarding the Emergency Management Performance Grant from the Massachusetts Energy Management Agency of approximately $13,760. The mayor requests his honorable body to approve expending of such funds and any future grant amendments for this grant. The $13,760 EMPG money provided through this grant will be utilized towards the procurement of a 2019 or 2020 Ford F-350 four-wheel drive pickup truck with a 9-foot plow, emergency warning equipment, and other accessories.
Second.
Thank you. Motion is in order. Any questions or comments?
We discussed it at length in committee last week.
Great. Any other questions or comments? Vice President Brica.
Very briefly, I know that during some of our discussion last week, this grant was specific to a vehicle procurement. So I know we were, this particular grant was specific to vehicle procurement. So one of the questions that was asked last week is whether we could take that money and utilize it someplace else and things like that. But I know that that's what you...
I spent some time with the chief on that.
Yes, and I know that you had said that last week, but I also received a phone call.
You double checking on me?
No, they called me directly. So I just wanted to, just, again, additionally throw my support behind you and your comments that you made last week on this.
I went specifically to the fire station to ask them that because one of the next items that were coming up, I was hoping it could be used that way.
Great. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? This requires a roll call vote, and we'll begin with Councilor Blair.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Mr. Delicio?
Yes.
Vice President Perica?
Yes.
Mr. Kobus?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
President Cooper?
Yes.
10 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Thank you. From the docket of April 2nd, 2019, I move to approve the request of the mayor to appropriate $31,275 from account 1-000-359000, undesignated fund balance free cash, to account 12201-000-587060, fire vehicle equipment replacement.
Second.
Thank you. Motion's in order. Any questions or comments?
This is the pickup truck we talked about in the last.
Any other questions or comments? Roll call vote is required, and we'll begin with Councilor Blair.
Waterman?
Waterman.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Mr. Kobus?
Yes.
Vice President Perica?
Yes.
Mr. Delicio?
Yes.
Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
President Cooper?
Yes.
10 yeas, no nays.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you. From the docket of April 2nd, 2019, I move to approve the request of the mayor to appropriate $22,500 from account 1-000-359-000, undesignated fund balance free cash, to account 1-2201-000-585049, fire industrial cleaner, to purchase an NFPA 1851 compliant gear washer and dryer cabinet for the Union Street Fire Station.
Second.
Thank you. Motion's in order. Any questions or comments?
Just to make a comment, I was called this week by the president of the union, fire union. I guess I maybe insulted him or something. I was abrupt with him. I told him that he couldn't see why we couldn't get two, not one, and also the uniforms at the same time. I informed them that that comes from the mayor's office down to us, not from here up to the mayor's office. And that we discussed it, and hopefully that those two items become budget items when we bring the budget up. And I don't want anybody on the fire department, the guys that are out there working and protecting us, to think any of us, and myself in particular, don't think enough of them to give them the right equipment so they're protected, so they can protect us. We're all fond proponents of our public safety officials. And I was sort of taken back by the presentation from the president of the union. So, my comments.
Thank you. Council Conti first, then Vice President Preeta.
So this points out the dire need for capital improvements across the city, because the last year when Councilor Dolan, Councilor Cobus, and I were in the South Attleboro line fire station, the Union Street Fire Station, we were, all three of us, maybe you weren't there, were appalled. I mean, I remember Councilor Dolan and I having a long conversation about how can these firefighters work on a daily basis with those uniforms and that cleaning equipment in that condition. So it has the support of the council. It's had the support of the council for anybody who's taken a walk through there. Councilor Waterman did it this year and came up with the same observation, that the need for capital improvements in the city across the board is dire. And we have not handled capital improvement in a management manner to the point where we could easily take care of things like this. And that concludes my comments.
Thank you. Vice President Preeta.
Thank you very much. Councilor Blair, I think that your comments were really good, meaning that you wanted to stress and bring home the fact that, we value, I mean, when you said I don't want anyone to think that we don't think enough about our firefighters or things like that.
I brought it up.
So that is a number one priority here, I would have to say. I think while this municipal council goes through and prioritizes how the recommendations that are sent down from the administration, I think that the administration also needs to do the same thing. Tonight alone, in the mayor's communication, there's a whole bunch of transfers that are needed to cover unanticipated retirements, and one of them, unfortunately, is due to some occupational cancer. Occupational cancer happens because of the jobs that these guys do, and having the washer and the drying cabinets helps prevent those kinds of things. So when we're looking at spending our capital, our free cash money, this is one of those areas where I think that the health and well-being of individuals who sacrifice for us should be the top priority. Maybe not another plow truck at the moment. It is something that is important, but when we have individuals who are retiring or falling ill because of the occupational cancers that are an actual fact, and we're not even providing them with the washing equipment to be able to prevent that, I think that's terrible, in my opinion.
Sad.
It's sad, and to have that proven problem not be prioritized, I find that difficult. So I'm hoping that beyond being budgeted, I would love to see an appropriation for that to come down to the municipal council long before we approve the budget.
I made it very clear to Mr. Jakes that was a proper channel. Shouldn't be lobbying us. You should be lobbying the front office to get that sent down, and it wouldn't fall upon deaf ears if it came to us.
If I may redirect, the funding request was made by the fire chief to the administration to pay for two of those, to have one here on Union Street and have one in South Attleboro. The administration didn't make that a priority. They said, no, you're going to get one, and that's the end of that. So being that we have the ability to send back and make the recommendation to the administration that this is an area in which we wouldn't give you a hard time on the municipal council floor, then I think that's okay for Mr. Jakes to make that ask for us to make, or for me currently right now to make that particular declaration.
Well, then it should be brought up that we send a memorandum up.
Agreed.
And also include in the uniforms.
Agreed.
I mean, the turnout gear. They each should have two sets of turnout gear.
I think what was most, if I just one last thing, I think what was most shocking to me, again, it's to see in writing the words occupational cancer. And it's something that simply by cleaning their gear can greatly reduce that, which has a ripple effect here in the city. We're making transfers right now to cover those kinds of things. It also affects our retirement board, the ripple effect across that for simply because of that, and we have a $22,000 appropriation that could make that be, could reduce that potential, I think that's just smart spending. Thank you.
Thank you. So what's not being said is the fact that if we don't have a second set of uniforms and we don't have functioning gear to clean the uniform, we have firefighters who are wearing contaminated uniforms when they're out doing their job. So I'm going to be a little more blunt. To the mayor, I would really appreciate an appropriation in 2 weeks for the second washer and the second set of uniforms. This is something that I think is irresponsible not to do as a city collectively. I very well may be out of line here, and to be quite honest, that's something I'll deal with. When I too spoke with President Jakes. It's so simple. The math was simple. If we don't have a backup and we don't have a way of cleaning it, we're wearing contaminated uniforms. So there are mothers and fathers and brothers and sisters who are going out there every single day keeping our mothers, our fathers, our brothers, our sisters, ourselves safe in contaminated uniforms, contaminated gear. It's not okay. So respectfully, I'm asking for an appropriation before the budget comes down, before we talk about capital improvements, because frankly, I think this is bigger than capital improvements or the budget. I think this is something that is responsible that we need to take care of.
Councilor Dolan?
I agree with everybody's sentiments, and I also spoke to Mr. Jakes, and he did tell me that he just got his second set of gear after 21 years. And may I ask Councilor Conti a question regarding capital improvements? How long because I remember the tour, but I can't remember how long both of these items have been on the capital improvements, that they've been asking for this washer and dryer.
I honestly believe it's more than 5 years, and it's in this plan on page 29 listed as urgent.
Because I do remember discussing it when we saw, because I believe last year that they weren't drying properly, so on and so forth. And I know they seemed a little irritated that it's been all this time that they've been asking for this. So I'm thankful we're getting one, and I would absolutely support a second.
Councilor Waterman?
I've been down there twice to the fire department talking to the chiefs, both chiefs, and to the firefighters in the past week. One thing I learned is that firefighters die of cancer on the average around 55 years old. They contract cancer. I am a cancer survivor, so I'm a little sensitive to this. 2.5 times the national population. These two gear chasers, they can only dry one set of, they call it PPE, personal protective equipment, at a time. And it can take quite a long time. So I asked them, what happens, and there's still 36 of our firefighters who don't have a second set of PPE. So if it isn't completed in the washing and drying cycle to get rid of all the contaminants that might cause cancer, and they get another fire alarm, I said, what happens? Well, they're running to the next fire with still partially contaminated, potentially PPEs, and they're soaking wet. We still have a 20-year-old gear washer down at the South Attleboro station, and it can only do one at a time. So the chief told me today that they're going to have to do part of that work, even if this arrives, which takes quite a while, I believe. They're going to have to run up to the Union Street station anyways. Am I correct?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well,
So
the one is still usable down there. They're still using the one in South Adams, just not
Right.
adequate.
But it's old, and it's
Yeah.
not much better than the one we're replacing. That's what I'm hearing.
Right.
So I conclude my case.
Thank you. Vice President Frick?
So again, thank you, Peter, for when you're saying our conversation tonight made it so clear to me how we are, we can't think enough about our firefighters. Like we get it, and it's interesting that the same individual that we've referenced this evening, the message that's being sent from someplace else is that there isn't enough money for you. That's what echoes in my head, is that there's not enough money just for you guys, but we'll reappropriate it and put it someplace else. We need to make it a priority, and that concludes my comments.
That's why I stopped by about the truck. We could get by without another truck for a little while. But that particular grant was vehicle orientated. It was emergency management grant, couldn't be used, and if it could have been, it would have been. Let's put it that way. So, yeah, you got to take care of those guys. And I didn't want anybody to think I wasn't. But I felt I was being pressured by the president of the union, where he should have been pressuring the guy in the corner.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, this requires a roll call vote, and we'll begin with Councilor Blair.
Mr. Blair.
Yes.
Ms. Holmes.
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds.
Yes.
Ms. Dolan.
Yes.
Mr. DeLisio.
Yes.
Vice President Perica.
Yes.
Mr. Kovas.
Yes.
Mr. Conti.
Yes.
Mr. Waterman.
Yes.
President Cooper.
Yes.
10 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Thank you. Next one's very simple. From the docket April 2nd, 2019, I move to approve the request of mayor to transfer $15,000 from account 112410000-578300 citywide reserve fund for transfer to account 122010000-532010 fire tuition and books to cover approved classes.
Second.
I'll say one word, contractual.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, this requires a roll call vote, and we'll begin with Council Waterman.
Mr. Waterman.
Yes.
Conti.
Yes.
Kovas.
Yes.
Vice President Perica.
Yes.
Mr. DeLisio.
Yes.
Ms. Dolan.
Yes.
Reynolds.
Yes.
Ms. Holmes.
Yes.
Mr. Blair.
Yes.
President Cooper.
Yes.
10 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you. Motion passes.
I have no other business this evening, Mr. President, but I'd look for a committee meeting next week at the appropriate time.
Great. Thank you. There is no old business. There's one item of new business, and I recognize Council Holmes.
Thank you. I move to refer the following matter to the appropriate committee for study and recommendation. New business, to strike the following ordinance in its entirety. Ordinance of the City of Attleboro, Section 2-17, Council on Disability.
Second.
Thank you.
Thank you. Motion's in order.
I had mentioned this during committee last week, so right now we have a Council on Disability and a Disability Commission. It makes more sense to strike this since we've already adopted a Disability Commission, so this is just kind of cleaning that up at this point.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, this requires a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Motion passes, and that is going to be referred to Ordinances, Elections, and Legislative Matters Committee. And with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. We are adjourned. 9:29.